Close your eyes and let the modern world fade away. Imagine a city where the air tastes of coal smoke and river salt, where the only light comes from the flickering amber glow of a gas lamp, and the only sound is the rhythmic clip-clop of a horse-drawn hansom cab disappearing into a wall of yellow mist. You are not just a visitor. You are a ghost in the machinery of 19th century London. Tonight, we walk the streets of 1888 not to find excitement, but to lose ourselves in the quiet, heavy history of a world long gone. Welcome. Before we begin our journey into the heart of the 19th century, I invite you to find your most comfortable position. Adjust your pillows, pull the covers close to your chin, and let your breathing slow. Inhale the stillness of the present moment, and as you exhale, imagine the modern world, the hum of electricity, the glow of screens, the vibration of the city simply dissolving. We are traveling back to a time when the world moved at the pace of a heartbeat, and the night was a living, breathing entity. We find ourselves in London. The year is 1888. The month is November. It is a time of transition, where the echoes of the medieval past still linger in the narrow alleys, even as the iron gears of the Industrial Revolution grind forward. But tonight, the gears have gone silent. Tonight, London is being swallowed dot as the sun dips below the horizon, casting a final bruised purple light over the jagged skyline of chimneys. A change begins in the air. It starts at the River Thames, the great, dark artery of the city. A thin, silver vapor rises from the water, curling around the mossy stones of the embankment. To a casual observer, it might seem like ordinary mist, the kind that graces a country meadow. But this is not the country. This is the largest metropolis the world has ever seen, a city of 4 million souls. And the mist here is hungry dot by 6 p.m. The silver vapor has transformed. As it drifts away from the river and into the crowded streets of Fleet Street and Cheapside, it encounters the breath of the city. In 1888, London survives on coal. Every basement, every parlor, every grand hotel, and every cramped tenement house has a hearth burning sea coal, a soft, bituminous coal rich in sulfur. Thousands of chimneys are exhaling thick, black plumes of smoke into the cooling night air. When this soot meets the river dampness, a chemical marriage occurs. The moisture clings to the particles of carbon and sulfur, weighing them down, trapping them near the ground. The mist begins to thicken, turning from silver to a pale, sickly yellow. By 8 p.m., the transformation is complete. The Pea-Souper has arrived. Listen to the silence it brings. The fog is so dense that it acts as an acoustic insulator. The usual clatter of iron-rimmed wheels on cobblestones is muffled, sounding as if it's happening miles away. The shouts of street vendors become ghostly whispers. You are standing on a street corner, perhaps near Covent Garden, but you can no longer see the other side of the road. You are wrapped in a cold, damp, sulphurous cocoon dot. To understand the great London mist, one must understand its texture. It is not merely a visual phenomenon. It is tactile. It feels heavy on the skin, a greasy dampness that finds its way through the thickest wool coat. If you were to reach out your hand, you could almost feel the grit of the soot suspended in the vapor. The color is what gave it its famous nickname. It isn't white like the clouds. Because of the sheer volume of pollutants, the fog takes on a variety of hues, sometimes a dull bronze, sometimes a deep chocolate brown, but most often a thick, stagnant greenish yellow, much like the pea soup served in the public houses of the East End dot as you breathe. You taste the history of the industrial age. There is the sharp, acrid sting of sulfur, the metallic tang of iron works from across the river, and the faint, earthy smell of the Thames mud. It is an aerosol of progress, a physical manifestation of the coal that powers the British Empire. To the Victorians, this fog was a sign of prosperity, yet it was also a deadly veil. Look up. Above you, the gas lamps are flickering to life. In this density, the lamps do not illuminate the street. They only illuminate themselves. Each lamp becomes a hovering, ethereal orb of amber light, suspended in the gloom. The light doesn't travel. It is strangled by the fog dot. You see a figure approaching. At first, it is just a darkening of the yellow mist, a shadow without form. Then, as it comes within 5 feet, the silhouette of a gentleman emerges, top hat tilted against the damp, a heavy muffler wrapped around his face to filter the air. He passes you like a ghost, his footsteps sounding like soft thuds on a carpeted floor. He doesn't look at you. In the great mist, everyone is an island. The fog creates a profound sense of isolation, a solitary journey through a familiar world made alien. This disorientation was a very real danger. There are historical accounts of men walking off the edges of piers into the Thames, believing they were still on the sidewalk. There are stories of people wandering into their own neighbors' gardens, unable to recognize the gates they had passed for 20 years. The fog stripped away the landmarks of the world, leaving only the immediate circle of one's own breath. Why London? Why was this city so uniquely cursed or blessed by this phenomenon? To find the answer, we must look at the geography of the Thames Valley. London sits in a natural basin, surrounded by hills to the north and south. During the late autumn and winter, a meteorological event called a temperature inversion frequently occurs. Usually, the air near the ground is warmer and rises into the atmosphere. But on these quiet November nights, a layer of warm air settles over the cold air trapped in the London basin. It acts like a lid on a pot. The smoke from a million chimneys and the steam from the river have nowhere to go. They are pressed down, compressed, and concentrated. In 1888, there were no regulations on what could be burned. The Smoke Abatement Act was in its infancy and largely ignored. The city was a victim of its own success. The more the factories produced, the more the houses were heated, the thicker the lid became. It was a self-sustaining cycle of gloom. Imagine now, leaving the street and stepping through the heavy oak door of a Victorian townhouse. A transition is startling. Inside, the air is still, but it carries the scent of beeswax, old books, and the lingering warmth of a dying fire. Even inside, the fog manages to seep through the cracks in the window frames. It hangs in the corners of the ceiling like a thin, ghostly lace. The master of the house sits in a wing-back chair, the velvet upholstery damp to the touch. He reads by the light of a single candle, the flame steady and quiet. Outside, the world has ceased to exist. The windows are no longer portals to the street. They are black mirrors, reflecting only the interior of the room. The Pea-Souper has erased the horizon. There is a strange comfort in this, a feeling of being protected, tucked away in a small pocket of light while a sea of yellow mystery swirls against the glass dot. It was in this environment that the great London mysteries were born. The fog was the perfect accomplice. It provided a canvas for the imagination and a cloak for the wayward. In 1888, the streets of Whitechapel were haunted by the specter of Jack the Ripper, a figure who, in the popular mind, was inseparable from the mist. The fog didn't just hide criminals. It hid the very nature of reality. A pile of discarded crates could look like a crouching beast. The moan of a distant foghorn on the river could sound like a human cry. It was a time of spiritualism where people believed the veil between the living and the dead was thin. In the yellow mist, that veil seemed to vanish entirely. But for the boring history seeker, the mystery is not one of fear, but of fascination. Think of the thousands of Link Boys young boys who carried torches of burning pitch in tow, charging a penny to lead wealthy pedestrians through the fog. Picture them running ahead, their torches spitting sparks of orange into the gloom, shouting, "Light! Light here, Governor!" They were the only guides in a city that had lost its way. The fog even reached into the quiet sanctuaries of the city's parks. In Kew Gardens and the Royal Parks, the Pea-Souper had a devastating effect on the exotic plants brought from the far reaches of the empire. The sulfur dioxide in the air turned into sulfuric acid when it touched the damp leaves. Gardeners would wake up the morning after a great fog to find their prize orchids, blackened and withered, as if burned by an invisible fire. The fog was a reminder that even the most beautiful things were subject to the heavy hand of the coal-burning age. The statues in the park's monuments to generals and queens began to dissolve slowly, their features softened by decades of acidic mist, turning them into the smooth, featureless figures of a dream dot as the night deepens. The fog settles into its most profound state. It is now midnight. The temperature has dropped further, and the moisture in the air begins to crystallize on the iron railings, forming a layer of black, rime ice dot. Listen to the clocks. Big Ben, the great bell of Westminster, tolls the hour. In the clear air, its sound is sharp and commanding. But tonight, the sound is heavy. It travels through the thick air like a stone dropped into honey. The vibration reaches you a deep, resonant thrum that you feel in your chest more than you hear in your ears. 1, 2, 3. The notes are spaced widely apart, allowing the silence of the fog to rush back in between each strike. The city is asleep, but the fog is awake. It moves with the slow, deliberate pace of a glacier. It flows down the stairwells of the underground, the newly built Metropolitan Railway filling the tunnels with a subterranean haze. It drifts into the stables, where the horses huddle together for warmth, their breath adding tiny plumes of white to the vast sea of yellow. All things must pass, even the great London mist. As the first hint of dawn approaches, though the sun is invisible behind the curtain of soot, a wind begins to stir from the east. This is the savior of the city. A breeze from the North Sea dots slowly, almost imperceptibly. The lid begins to lift. The dense, mustard-colored clouds start to break into fragments. You can see the cobblestones at your feet again. Then the base of a lamppost. Then the faint outline of a brick wall. The air begins to circulate. The acrid taste of sulfur fades, replaced by the cold, sharp scent of the morning. The yellow ghost retreats back to the river, clinging to the water as if reluctant to leave. The city begins to breathe again. Chimneys start their morning exhale, but for a few brief hours. The air is clear enough to see the spires of the city reaching for a pail. Winter sky. The Pea-Souper of Victorian London was more than just weather. It was a state of being. It was the shadow cast by the light of the 19th century. It turned a bustling, loud, and often harsh city into a place of quiet reflection, mystery, and forced stillness. As you lie there now, Imagine yourself as part of that stillness. The fog has cleared, the streets are quiet, and the heavy weight of the day has been lifted. The history of the mist is now just a story, a layer of the past that we have explored together. The amber glow of the gas lamps is fading. The rhythm of the Victorian night is slowing down. Your journey through the yellow mist of 1888 is complete. You are safe, warm, and tucked away in the present, while the echoes of the cobblestones and the whispers of the Thames drift away into the distance. Sleep now. Let the fog of sleep gentle, white, and peaceful wrap around you. There are no mysteries left to solve tonight. Only the deep, restorative silence of history. Close your eyes and settle deeper into your blankets. The yellow mist of our previous walk still lingers in the corners of the streets, but now the sun has fully retreated. The city is entering its most vulnerable hour, the transition from the gray of dusk to the velvet black of a Victorian night. In this era, before the flip of a switch could flood a room with sterile white light, the darkness was a physical presence. It was something to be managed, respected, and held at bay. Tonight, we follow a shadow within the shadows. He is a man of rhythmic movement and quiet purpose. He is the lamplighter. To the children of 1888, he is a wizard of the evening. To the historian, he is the keeper of the flame. Imagine you are standing on a quiet residential street in Marylebone. The houses are tall, narrow, and made of soot-stained brick. The air is cold, a crisp, biting dampness that makes you pull your collar tighter. There is a sound, a rhythmic, metallic thump-clink approaching from the end of the block. Out of the gloom emerges a man. He doesn't hurry. Hurrying is for the merchants and the hansom cab drivers. The lamplighter moves with a steady, measured gait, a pace honed by decades of walking the same 12-mile circuit every single evening of his life. He carries a long, slender pole made of polished wood, tipped with a brass head that gleams like a dull star in the twilight. This pole is his scepter. It is known as a leaper. At its tip is a small oil lamp protected by a perforated brass casing, and a hook used to turn the gas cock on the street lamp. This is the ritual that has defined the London night for nearly 70 years. To understand this man's ritual, we must understand the miracle of the gas he awakens. Before the early 1800s, London at night was a place of true, terrifying darkness. People carried link torches made of pitch and tow, or they simply stayed indoors. The first gas street lamps appeared on Pall Mall in 1807, a marvel of the new industrial age. By 1888, the city is honeycombed with miles of cast-iron pipes buried beneath the cobblestones. These pipes carry town gas, a byproduct of coal heated in giant retorts at the massive gasworks in places like Beckton or Nine Elms. It is a volatile, pungent mixture of hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and methane. It is the literal breath of the earth, captured and redirected to serve the needs of the empire. Our lamplighter reaches the first lamp of his beat. The lamp post is a work of art in itself, a fluted column of cast iron, painted a deep forest green, topped with a glass lantern in the shape of an inverted pyramid. Watch his hands. They are calloused, stained with the oils and soot of his trade. He looks up at the glass lantern. With a practiced flick of his pole, he engages the small lever at the base of the lamp head. You hear a faint metallic click, followed by a soft, directional hiss, the sound of pressurized gas escaping the burner. Then, he thrusts the lighted end of his pole through a small trapdoor in the bottom of the glass. A soft, muffled explosion of light occurs. For a second, the flame is blue and chaotic, then it settles into a steady, flat, butterfly-shaped glow. This is the fishtail burner, the standard of the mid-Victorian era. The light it emits is not the harsh, buzzing glare of a modern street lamp. It is warm, amber, and living. It pulses slightly, as if the lamp itself is breathing. The lamplighter doesn't linger to admire his work. He withdraws the pole, the trapdoor clicks shut, and he moves to the next post. Thump clink. Behind him, a pool of golden light spills across the wet stones of the pavement. Ahead of him, the street remains a tunnel of uncertainty. He is the bridge between the two. Being a keeper of the flame was often a hereditary profession. Fathers passed their poles and their beats down to their sons. There was a profound sense of pride in the work. A lamplighter was more than a laborer. He was a guardian dot in the 1880s. London's police force, the peelers, relied heavily on the lamplighters. Because the lamplighter moved through the streets at the exact moment when the respectable world went inside and the underworld came out, he saw everything. He knew which windows were left unlatched, which stray dogs were friendly, and which shadows in the alleys didn't belong. The lamplighters had their own culture, their own slang, and their own pubs where they would gather after their morning rounds to drink dark ales and rest their tired legs. They were the silent witnesses to the city's secrets. Yet, in our story, our man remains silent. He is a ghost of the evening, a shadow that brings the light. Let your mind drift to the flame itself. If you were to look closely at the burner inside the glass, you would see a marvel of 19th century engineering. The gas passes through a small ceramic or metal slit. As it meets the oxygen of the air, its COMBUSTS dot, however, the light doesn't actually come from the gas itself. It comes from tiny particles of carbon soot that are heated to such a high temperature that they glow white hot. This is called incandescence. Each street lamp is a miniature furnace, a tiny sun tethered to a pole dot. In 1888, a new invention was just beginning to appear, the Wells-back gas mantle. This was a fragile, silk-like mesh impregnated with rare earth metals. When placed over the gas flame, it glowed with a brilliant, steady white light, far brighter than the old fishtail burners. Our lamplighter views these new mantles with suspicion. They are delicate. A heavy vibration from a passing mail coach can shatter them into dust. He prefers the old, reliable flame, the flame that dances dot as you follow him down the street. Notice the smells. The scent of the Victorian night is a complex tapestry. Overriding everything is the smell of the gas itself. A sharp, garlic-like odor added so that leaks could be detected. Then there is the smell of the burning wick in the lamplighter's pole. A scent of charred cotton and rapeseed oil dot. Mix this with the damp smell of the soot on the brick walls. The faint aroma of roasting chestnuts from a vendor 3 blocks away, and the omnipresent scent of horse manure and river salt. It is a heavy, thick atmosphere, yet under the influence of the gaslight, it feels oddly cozy. The light creates rooms in the street. Inside the circle of light, you are safe. Outside, in the darkness between the lamps, the world is vast and unknown dot. The life of a keeper of the flame was not without its dangers. On nights of the Pea-Souper fog we discussed before, the lamplighter's job became a frantic race. The fog would often extinguish the flames, or worse. Cause the gas to build up inside the glass lanterns dot, there are accounts of exploding lamps, where a lamplighter would insert his torch into a lantern filled with trapped gas, resulting in a shatter of glass and a fireball. Our man, however, is careful. He sniffs the air at each post. He listens for the particular singing sound of a healthy burner. He treats the gas with the respect one gives to a caged lion. Then there were the ladders. Before the invention of the leaper pole, lamplighters had to carry heavy wooden ladders, leaning them against the crossbars of the lamp posts. In the rain and ice of a London winter, a slip could mean a broken limb or worse. The pole he carries now is a symbol of progress. It allows him to stay on the ground, keeping his feet on the familiar, if cold, cobblestones. As the lamplighter moves through a grand square, perhaps Grosvenor Square, the light interacts with the architecture in fascinating ways. The Victorian era loved its ornamentation. The gaslight catches the curves of the wrought iron balconies, casting long, spindly shadows that look like spider webs against the white stone of the mansions. The shadows move. Because the gas flame is not a static point of light, but a flickering blade of fire, the shadows it casts are never still. They shiver and stretch. To a weary traveler, it might seem as if the buildings themselves are swaying in the breeze. The lamplighter sees this every night. He sees the way the light glints off the brass knockers on the doors of the wealthy, and how it barely penetrates the dark, yawning mouths of the mews, the back alleys where the horses and servants live. He is the one who defines the boundaries of the visible world dock by 10 p.m. His first round is done. The city is lit, but his job is only half finished. He retires for a few hours, perhaps to a small room above a stable, or to a quiet corner of a public house, while the city sleeps under his care. During these hours, the gas lamps are the only sentinels. They stand in long, receding lines, marking the veins of the city. They illuminate the night hawks, the watchmen, the late shift printers of Fleet Street, and the weary doctors making house calls. If a lamp goes out, the darkness rushes back in like a flood. A dark lamp is a sign of trouble, a broken link in the chain of urban civilization. The lamplighter knows that tomorrow he will have to repair it. Replacing the cock or cleaning the soot from the glass dot now. Imagine the clock striking 5 a.m. The sky in the east is not yet bright, but it has turned a deep, bruised charcoal color. The lamplighter is back on the street. The ritual is now reversed. He doesn't need his flame now, only the hook on his pole. Clink. He reaches up, catches the lever, and pulls. The hiss stops. The butterfly of light vanishes, leaving a small wisp of white smoke that curls against the glass before disappearing out one by one. He puts the city to bed. It is a melancholy task. As the lamps go out, the city loses its magic. The amber glow is replaced by the harsh, cold reality of a gray London morning. The architectural details that looked like lace in the gaslight now just look like dirty stone. The shadows that danced are now just stagnant patches of dampness. He finishes his beat just as the first. Horse-drawn milk carts begin to rattle over the stones. His legs ache. His shoulders are stiff from carrying the pole, and his lungs are full of the morning mist. But he has done his duty. He has kept the flame out as our lamplighter walks home in the growing light of 1888. He passes a sight that fills him with a quiet dread. On a street corner near the Victoria Embankment, a crew of men is digging a trench. They aren't laying gas pipes. They are laying thick copper wires encased in GUTTA-PERCHA above them. A new kind of lamp has been installed. It is a large glass globe containing a carbon arc. When it is turned on, it doesn't flicker. It doesn't hiss. It hums with a terrifying, high-pitched energy and emits a light so bright it hurts the eyes out. Light that mimics the sun but possesses none of its warmth. This is the electric light. The lamplighter knows his days are numbered. The electric lights don't need a man with a pole. They are controlled by a central station far away. The silent ritual is being replaced by the invisible current. But for tonight, in our journey, the electricity is still a novelty. The gaslight still reigns supreme. The lamplighter is still the master of the evening dot. As you lie there, imagine the last lamp on our street. The lamplighter has just lit it. He looks up at the flame for a brief moment, making sure it's steady. He nods to himself, shoulder slings his pole, and disappears into the fading mist. The flame remains. It is a small, warm heart beating in the center of the darkness. It flickers slightly as a breeze catches it, casting a soft, golden light over your thoughts. The sound of the lamplighter's footsteps thump-clink. Thump-clink is growing fainter and fainter, moving further down the road. Heading toward a horizon, you can no longer see. The room you are in is dark, but it is a safe darkness. A Victorian darkness protected by the memory of the keeper of the flame. The hiss of the gas is now just the sound of your own slow, steady breathing. The amber light is behind your eyelids now, a warm glow that signals the end of the day's journey. Sleep now, under the watchful eye of the old lamps. The city is lit, the shadows are in their place, and the ritual is complete. Find that place of perfect stillness once again. Let your shoulders sink an inch deeper into the mattress. Imagine the weight of your limbs as if they were made of the same heavy, enduring materials we are about to explore. We are standing now in the center of a London street in 1888. The lamplighter has moved on, and the Pea-Souper fog has thinned just enough for us to see the ground. Tonight, we are not looking at the horizon. We are looking at the geometry of the Victorian world, the hard, cold, and meticulously crafted surfaces of cobblestone and iron. Look down at your feet. You are not standing on a smooth, modern asphalt road. Beneath you is a rugged, rhythmic mosaic of stone. In common parlance, we call these cobblestones, but the Victorian engineer would gently correct us. These are setts. Unlike the rounded, smooth river stones used in the medieval era, these setts are rectangular blocks of granite, hand-quarried and hand-hewn. Imagine the sheer scale of the labor involved. Every single stone you see, thousands upon thousands in this one street alone, was shaped by a mason's hammer. Most of this granite traveled a long way to reach London. It came from the rugged coasts of Aberdeen in Scotland, or perhaps the quarries of Cornwall. It is a stone of immense density, built to withstand the crushing weight of the British Empire. In the moonlight, the granite has a subtle crystalline shimmer. If you were to kneel and touch it, the stone would feel icy and slightly greasy with the night's dampness. The geometry of the street is intentional. The stones are laid in slightly curving rows, like the scales of a fish. This pattern isn't just for beauty. It's a feat of civil engineering. The curves allow the stones to lock together under the pressure of heavy wagon wheels, preventing them from shifting. Between the stones, in the narrow cracks, is a mixture of sand and pitch, a thick black tar. As you walk, your footsteps make a sharp, hollow tack-tack-tack sound, a sound that has defined urban life for a century. In the boring history of our sleep, the sound of the street is our metronome. In 1888, the street is never truly silent. Even at midnight, there is the distant, rhythmic resonance of a horse's hoof-doubt. Listen to the difference in tone. When a horse pulls a hansom cab over these granite sets, it creates a percussion section. The iron shoes of the horse strike the granite with a melodic, ringing clink, while the iron-rimmed wooden wheels create a low, rolling rumble. It is a heavy, industrial sound. Wealthier residents in neighborhoods like Belgravia or Mayfair couldn't stand this constant roar. To appease them, the city often laid down wood paving blocks of yellow pine or Australian jarrah wood, soaked in creosote. When we walk from a granite street onto a wood-paved one, the sound suddenly vanishes. It feels as if someone has laid a heavy velvet carpet over the world. The horse's hooves become soft thuds. The wheels become a gentle hum. But here, in our mysterious midnight walk, we stay on the granite. We stay where the history is loudest. Now, let your gaze drift from the ground to the side of the street. Separating the public sidewalk from the private homes is a continuous, jagged line of black iron. These are the Victorian railings. To the modern eye, they are decorative. To the Victorian, they were a social and physical necessity. In the 19th century, London was a city of vertical layers. The wealthy lived on the ground floor and first floor, but the lifeblood of the house, the kitchens. The sculleries, the coal cellars existed in the area. The area was a deep, stone-lined trench between the sidewalk and the house's foundation. The iron railings were the only thing preventing a midnight pedestrian from falling 10 feet into a servant's laundry tub. Look at the design of these railings. They are almost always made of cast iron, produced in the great foundries of the north. The geometry is repetitive and hypnotic. Vertical bars, spaced exactly 4 inches apart, topped with finials, those sharp spear-like points. Some are shaped like fleur-de-lis, others like pineapples, a symbol of hospitality, and some like simple, grim arrowheads. The iron is cold. It is painted with layers of thick, black bitumen paint to protect it from the corrosive London fog. If you ran your hand along them, you would feel the slight irregularities of the casting, the seams where the molten iron once flowed into the sand mold. They are the teeth of the house, guarding the privacy of the elite from the wandering eyes of the street. As we walk along the sidewalk, watch the ground carefully. Every 20 feet or so, set into the paving stones, you will see a small circular iron plate. It is about 12 inches in diameter, decorated with an intricate, embossed pattern stars, grids, or the name of a local foundry like Hayward Brothers Borough. This is the coal hole. It is a tiny, functional portal. During the day, the coal man would arrive with his horse and cart. He would lift this iron lid with a hooked tool and empty sacks of sea coal directly into the cellar below. Think of the geometry here. These circles are the only break in the rectangular world of the paving stones. They are worn smooth by the millions of boots that have stepped on them. Underneath that plate, in the darkness of the cellar, lies the fuel that keeps the Victorian world warm. The coal hole is a reminder that the beauty of the architecture above is entirely dependent on the grimy, black labor below. Now, look up at the walls that line our path. They aren't made of stone, but of brick. Specifically, the London stock brick. These bricks have a unique history. They were made from the clay of the Thames Valley, mixed with breeze, which was a polite Victorian term for sifted household ash and cinders. This gave the bricks a porous, durable quality. Originally, these bricks were a warm mustard yellow. But by 1888, After decades of soaking in the Pea-Souper fogs and coal smoke, they have turned a deep soot-stained gray or charcoal black. The geometry of the wall is known as the Flemish bond, one long brick, one short brick, repeated in an interlocking dance dot in the moonlight. The texture of the brick is rough and honest. It absorbs the sound of the city rather than reflecting it. When you stand close to a brick wall in London at night, the world feels muffled, as if the wall itself is listening to your heartbeat. The mortar lines, the pointing, are thin and precise, a testament to the Victorian obsession with order in a city that was often chaotic dot between the sets of the road and the paving stones of the sidewalk lies the curbstone. This is a massive, solid beam of granite, sometimes 3 feet long and a foot deep. It is the boundary line. Next to the curb is the gutter. In 1888, the geometry of the gutter is vital for the city's survival. It is slightly sloped to carry the rain and the less pleasant fluids of a horse-drawn city toward the gully holes, the iron grates that lead to Joseph Bazalgette's magnificent new sewer system. The gutter is where the debris of history collects. A discarded newspaper, a broken clay pipe, a lost button from a silk coat. Everything eventually flows to the gutter. Yet, in our midnight walk, the gutter is clean, washed by the evening's drizzle, reflecting the amber glow of the gas lamps in the shallow puddles that have gathered in the depressions of the granite. Before we move on, look at the base of the stone steps leading to a grand front door. There, bolted into the stone or built into a small niche in the wall, is a small ornate piece of iron with a flat, horizontal blade. This is the boot scraper. Its geometry is simple, but its purpose was profound. In a world of mud, horse manure, and coal dust, the boot scraper was the threshold of civilization. Everyone from the master of the house to the delivery boy used it. It is a humble object, but it speaks volumes about the Victorian struggle for respectability. To enter a house with clean boots was to respect the sanctuary within. The scraper is often shaped like a miniature bridge or a lyre. It is worn thin in the center, a physical record of thousands of scrapings, thousands of arrivals, thousands of stories. Stand in the middle of the street, now and look straight ahead. The geometry of the Victorian street creates a perfect one-point perspective. The parallel lines of the iron railings, the curbstones, and the rows of gas lamps all seem to converge at a single point in the distance, swallowed by the remaining mist. It is a view that suggests infinite order. The British Empire was obsessed with this kind of perspective, the idea that the world could be mapped, measured, and contained within straight lines of iron and stone. Yet, as we know, the mist always lingers. The straight lines of the railings eventually disappear into the yellow gloom. The order is an illusion, a brave attempt to cage the wild, ancient spirit of London. As the night moves toward the small hours, the temperature of the city drops. The iron railings begin to sing. As the metal contracts in the cold, it makes tiny, microscopic popping sounds, a metallic ticking that you can only hear if the street is absolutely silent. The granite sets, too, hold the cold. They have a high thermal mass. They spent all day absorbing the meager heat of a pale sun, and now they are releasing it, creating a thin layer of freezing air right at ground level. This is why the fog always feels coldest at your ankles. As we conclude this portion of our walk, take a moment to appreciate the sheer weight of what surrounds you. The Victorian street was built to last for centuries. It was built with the assumption that the world would always be this way ordered, heavy, and made of iron. You are walking on history that refused to erode. The stones you imagine are likely still there, beneath layers of modern asphalt, waiting in the dark. The iron railings, though many were taken during later wars, still stand in the quiet squares of Bloomsbury and Kensington, holding the same shadows they held in 1888. Let your mind rest on that thought. The permanence of the stone, the strength of the iron, the cold, rhythmic geometry of the street. It is a stable world, a solid world. The sound of the horse's hooves has faded entirely. The tack, dash, tack, dash, tack of your own boots is slowing down. You are moving away from the hard surfaces of the street and back toward the soft, formless world of sleep. The iron railings are dissolving into the mist of your dreams. The granite sets are turning into soft clouds. The geometry of London is fading, leaving only the peace of the night. Allow your breath to synchronize with the slow, steady pace of our narrative. Imagine you are leaning against a cold, soot-stained brick wall at the edge of Piccadilly Circus. The great theaters have long since emptied, and the flashy gin palaces have shuttered their ornate doors. The city is held in a state of suspension. Yet, even in this deepest hour, London has a pulse. It is a mechanical, biological rhythm that moves through the veins of the streets. Tonight, we explore the hansom cabe, the two-wheeled gondola of London, as Benjamin Disraeli once called it, and the intricate world of the men and horses who navigated the midnight. Listen. Far off in the distance, where the yellow fog swallows the street lamps, a sound emerges. It isn't a single noise, but a layered symphony of motion. First, there is the sharp, rhythmic clip-clop of iron-shod hooves striking the granite sets we explored earlier. It is a hollow, ringing sound that echoes off the canyon-like walls of the townhouses. Accompanying the hooves is the low, gravelly rumble of two massive wooden wheels, their outer rims bound in thick iron, crushing the grit and dampness of the road. Finally, there is the jingle, the faint, melodic tinkling of the brass harness fittings and the small bells that some drivers attach to their horses to warn pedestrians in the fog dot as the sound grows louder. A silhouette emerges from the vapor. Two oversized wheels, nearly 5 feet in diameter, appear first, followed by the sleek, lacquered body of the cab. This is the hansom. It does not lumber like a wagon. It glides. It has a predatory, elegant grace, leaning forward as if it is eager to reach its destination dot. To understand the boring history of Victorian transport, we must look at the design of this machine. Patented in 1834 by Joseph Hansom, an architect by trade, this vehicle was a revolution in urban geometry. Unlike the heavy, four-wheeled growlers that carried families and luggage, the hansom was built for speed, maneuverability, and a touch of daring. The passenger compartment is a low-slung, intimate cabin designed for two. It is front-loaded, meaning you step directly into the cab from the street. There are two folding wooden doors, aprons, that reach up to your waist and above them. A glass window that can be lowered by the driver if the rain turns to a horizontal sleet. But the most striking feature of the hansom is the driver's position. He does not sit in front of you. He sits behind and above you, perched on a precarious, padded dicky seat at the very rear of the roof. From this height, he has a bird's-eye view of the horse's ears and the road ahead. He holds the long leather reins that run across the top of the cab's roof, guided by small silver hoops. To the passenger inside, it feels as if the cab is being steered by an invisible hand. Imagine you are the passenger. You are encased in a world of dark blue velvet upholstery. The air inside the cab smells of old cigar smoke, damp wool, and the faint, sweet scent of the horse. It is incredibly private, perhaps the only place in all of London where two people can speak without being overheard by the masses. Suddenly, a small square door opens in the roof above your head. This is the trapdoor. It is the only way to communicate with the driver. You see a pair of eyes looking down at you, or perhaps just hear a gruff, muffled voice asking for your destination. To the embankment, Jarvey, you might say. The trapdoor snaps shut with a wooden click. The driver flicks his long whip, not to strike the horse, but to make a sharp crack in the air above its head. The cab jolts, the springs groan, and you are swept into the rhythmic flow of the night. The true heart of this transport rhythm is the horse. In 1888, there are over 300,000 horses working in London. The handsome horse is a specific breed, usually a roadster, or a cross-breed with a bit of thoroughbred blood. It is lean, muscular, and possesses a stoic intelligence. As the horse trots through the midnight streets, its body becomes a furnace in the cold air. Steam rises from its flanks in thick, white clouds, mixing with the yellow fog. You can hear its breathing, a deep, rhythmic huff, huff, huff that syncs with the strike of its hooves. The life of a London cab horse is a cycle of intense labor and quiet waiting. Between fares, the horse stands at a rank or stand, its head drooping into a nosebag filled with oats and chaff. The smell of the horse, the ammonia of its sweat, the earthy sweetness of the hay is the permanent perfume of the Victorian street. In our midnight walk, this smell is a reminder that the city is a biological entity, powered by muscle and hay rather than electricity and oil. If we follow the cab down toward the river, we pass a cabman's shelter. These are small, green-painted wooden huts, no bigger than a garden shed, but long and narrow. They were built by a charitable move to keep drivers out of the pubs during their breaks. Inside, a small stove crackles with coal. A shelterman serves mugs of thick, boiling tea and plates of bread and scrape, bread with a thin layer of butter. Outside, the hansom cabs are lined up like silent black beetles. The drivers, often called Jarvies or cab boys, lean against the wheels, their heavy overcoats caped at the shoulders to shed the rain. Their conversation is a low murmur, a rhythmic exchange of cabbies can't. They talk about the bilks, passengers who run away without paying, the state of the knackers, worn-out horses, and the ever-present mystery of the fog. Their lives are measured in fares, the silver shillings that pass from a silk-gloved hand to a fingerless wool mitten. Not all movement in the night is as elegant as the hansom. Occasionally, the rhythm of our walk is interrupted by a much heavier sound, a deep, grinding rattle. This is the Clarence, known colloquially as a growler. The growler is a four-wheeled, closed carriage. It is the workhorse of the midnight hours. It moves slowly, its four wheels creating a constant, dissonant vibration against the stones. It is often piled high with leather trunks on its roof, secured by fraying ropes. If the hansom is the pulse of the city, the growler is its heavy, labored breath. It carries families arriving at the railway stations, or perhaps a doctor with his heavy black bag, heading toward a tenement in the East End. The growler doesn't glide. It endures. It represents the domestic, burden side of Victorian life. a stark contrast to the swift, bachelor-like freedom of the hansom. One of the most fascinating, boring details of the hansom is the way it handles a corner. Because it has only two wheels and a very high center of gravity, a turn at high speed is a display of physics. As the driver pulls on the reins, the horse leans into the curve. The cab tilts. The passenger inside feels a momentary surge of centrifugal force being pressed into the velvet cushions. The massive wheels, with their wooden spokes, creak under the lateral pressure. In the 1880s, the frictionless axle was the height of technology. The axle was kept lubricated with wheel grease, a thick black substance made of tallow and graphite. If the grease ran thin, the cab would begin to shriek, a high-pitched, metallic wail that would cut through the fog like a knife. But tonight, our cab is well maintained. The only sound is the rhythmic swish of the wheels through the shallow puddles. Who travels at this hour? The midnight pulse carries the secrets of the empire. Inside one hansom, a member of Parliament might be returning from a late-night session at Westminster, his mind heavy with the Irish question or the coal strikes. In another, a young clerk might be splurging his month's wages to impress a lady after a night at the music hall. The transport system is a great equalizer. The same velvet cushions that held a duchess in the afternoon might hold a weary journalist in the evening. The cab is a transient space, a temporary home that belongs to no one and everyone. As the cab passes a gas lamp, the light momentarily illuminates the interior. You see the flash of a white shirt front, the glow of a ruby ring, or perhaps just a pair of tired eyes staring out into the mist. Then a cab moves back into the darkness, and the passenger returns to the anonymity of the night. In the folklore of the London streets, there were ghost cabs, unlicensed vehicles that prowled the outskirts of the city, their lamps unlit, waiting for those who didn't want to be seen. But the watermen were very real. These were officials stationed at the cab stands. They wore brass badges and carried buckets of water for the horses. The waterman was the conductor of the transport orchestra. He ensured the cabs moved in the correct order, settled disputes between drivers, and kept the stand clean. His whistle was a sharp, piercing note that punctuated the rhythmic low-end rumble of the wheels. As we reach the end of our exploration of the transport pulse, we must acknowledge the shadow of the future. In 1888, the horse is king. The rhythm of the city is an organic one, the beat of hearts and the strike of hooves. But if we look closely at the boring history of this decade, the first electrobuses and steam carriages are beginning to appear in experimental trials. Within 20 years, the 300,000 horses will begin to vanish. The clip-clop will be replaced by the steady, soulless thrum of the internal combustion engine. The smell of hay will be replaced by the smell of gasoline. But not tonight. Tonight, the pulse is pure. The hansom cab we have been following has reached its destination. It pulls up to the curb with a gentle hiss of the iron tires against the stone. The horse stands still, its head bowed, steam rising in a final, great plume from its nostrils. The passenger steps out. A coin is exchanged, and the trapdoor shuts for the last time. The driver clicks his tongue. The horse leans into the harness once more. The sound begins to recede. It grows softer as the cab moves back into the heart of the mist. The rhythm is becoming a whisper. The pulse of the city is slowing down as it reaches the furthest extremities of the suburbs. You are standing alone again on the cobblestones. The silence of the fog rushes back in to fill the space where the cab had been. But the rhythm stays with you, a steady, 4-beat measure that matches your own heartbeat. Your mind is now as heavy as a Victorian growler, but as steady as a Hanson's trot. The world is moving away, leaving you in the quiet, dark heart of the night. Allow your mind to become fluid, like the tide. Imagine leaving the solid safety of the brick-lined streets and stepping onto the wide, granite expanse of the Victoria Embankment. The air here is different. It is colder, heavier, and carries a sharp, saline edge, the scent of the North Sea mixing with the ancient mud of the riverbed. Before you lies the Thames. In the year 1888, it is the busiest waterway on the planet. But at this hour, under the thick shroud of the midnight mist, it is a silent, obsidian mirror. It is a witness to 2,000 years of human endeavor, and tonight it has much to tell us in a whisper. As you lean against the river wall, feel the texture of the stone beneath your palms. This is Cornish granite, gray and unyielding. You are standing on one of the greatest engineering feats of the Victorian age, the Thames Embankment. Designed by Sir Joseph Bazalgette, this wall did more than just provide a walkway. It reclaimed 37 acres of mudflats from the river, narrowing the channel to increase the speed of the current and wash away the city's waste. But more importantly, for our sleep-bound journey, it created a boundary between the chaos of the city and the mystery of the water. Look at the lamp posts that line the wall. They are different from the ones in the streets. These are the sturgeon lamps cast in heavy bronze. 2 mythical sea creatures, scales glistening with dampness, wrap their tails around the base of the fluted column. The light they cast doesn't reach the middle of the river. It only illuminates the first few yards of the swirling, dark water, making the surface look like liquid lead. The Thames is not a static body of water. It is a tidal river, a long arm of the sea that reaches into the heart of England. Listen to the sound against the stone. Slap, gurgle, hiss. In 1888, the river breathes twice a day. The tide rises and falls by as much as 20 feet. Right now, the tide is coming in. The water is making, pushing upward from the estuary, bringing with it the cold energy of the Atlantic. You can see the strength of it in the way the moored barges strain at their heavy iron chains. The chains groan a low, metallic lament that carries across the water like the cry of a rusted bird. This rising tide is a clock. For centuries, the life of Londoners was governed by this movement. Ship captains, lightermen, and coal heavers all waited for the turn of the tide to move their heavy loads. As you stand here, you are witnessing a rhythm that predates the city itself. A biological pulse that the Victorian engineers tried to cage in granite, but could never truly control. Look to your left, through the gaps in the yellow fog. You see the massive, dark silhouette of Waterloo Bridge, the Bridge of Sighs, as the locals sometimes call it, because of the many weary souls who found their end there. Its arches are perfect semicircles of stone, disappearing into the water like the ribs of a giant submerged beast. Further down, you might see the ghostly skeletal frame of a new giant rising from the water. It is the Tower Bridge, currently under construction in 1888. Its 2 great Gothic towers are draped in scaffolding and fog, looking like the ruins of a cathedral floating in the sky. It represents the ambition of the age of bridge that can open its jaws to let the great tall ships pass through to the upper pool. Each bridge creates its own acoustic world. Under the arches, the sound of the water is amplified, echoing in a hollow, rhythmic chant. The fog settles more densely under these stone spans, creating pockets of absolute darkness where the river seems to stand still. The river is never truly empty. Even now, hundreds of vessels are moored in the Pool of London. There are the Thames sailing barges, with their massive red ochre sails now furled tight against their wooden masts. These barges are the pack mules of the river, carrying hay, bricks, and grain. In the dark, their masts look like a forest of charred trees stripped of their leaves. Further out are the colliers, the iron-hulled, steamships from Newcastle, their holds heavy with the black coal that powers the city's millions of fires. You can hear the low, rhythmic thrum-thrum of a distant steam pump from one of these ships, a mechanical heartbeat that competes with the natural pulse of the tide. The ships move slightly with the swell, their wooden hulls rubbing against the dolphins, the thick clusters of wooden piles driven into the riverbed. The sound is a deep, agonizing creak, the sound of ancient timber under pressure. It is a comforting sound, the sound of a world at rest, but still under tension. Out in the center of the channel, a small, low-slung boat moves silently through the mist. It has no lights. This is a galley of the Thames River Police, the oldest professional police force in the world. Now there are 4 men in the boat. 2 are rowing, their oars muffled with strips of old leather to prevent the thole pins from clicking. They are hunting for river pirates' men who slip through the darkness to cut the moorings of barges or steal silk and tea. From the warehouses of Wapping Dot, the rowers move in perfect, rhythmic synchronicity. Dip, pull, feather, slide. The sound is almost imperceptible, a soft tearing of the water's surface. They are the shadows of the law, moving through a liquid labyrinth where the normal rules of the street do not apply. They pass into a bank of fog, and the sound of their oars is swallowed instantly, leaving only the silence of the Thames. The Thames we see is only part of the story. Beneath the streets we just walked, other rivers are flowing. These are the lost rivers of London, the Fleet, the Tyburn, the Walbrook, and the Westbourne. Dot in the ancient times. These were clear, sparkling streams where salmon swam. But as the city grew, the Victorians arched them over with brick and turned them into sewers. As you stand by the embankment, you can see the outfall of the River Fleet, a massive iron maw set into the granite wall. Even in the dead of night, you can hear the rush of water from within the tunnel. It is a different sound than the Thames, more chaotic, more confined. It is the sound of the city's hidden life, the underriver that flows beneath the feet of the sleeping millions. It is a reminder that the geography of London is a vertical stack of histories, one flowing on top of the other. The Thames is the world's longest archaeological site. The mud at the bottom of the river, the Thames silt, is anaerobic, meaning it lacks oxygen. This preserves everything that falls into it. Think of what lies directly beneath the water in front of you. There are Roman coins dropped by soldiers crossing the first wooden London Bridge. There are Viking swords, lost in the heat of battle 1,000 years ago. There are medieval pilgrims' badges, Tudor clay pipes, and Victorian wedding rings. The river is a vast, liquid museum. It hoards the discarded fragments of human lives, slowly burying them in layers of silt. As the tide pulls at the mud, it occasionally reveals a piece of the pasta leather shoe from the 1400s or a fragment of a Roman pot. The river doesn't just flow through space. It flows through time. Every ripple on the surface is a movement over a landscape of lost things. Turn your back to the water for a moment and look at the tall, slender obelisk standing on the embankment. This is Cleopatra's Needle. It was carved in Egypt 1,500 years before London even existed. It was a gift to the British Empire, and it arrived here in 1878 after a harrowing journey across the sea. The stone is red, granite from Aswan, and its surface is covered in ancient hieroglyphs, praises to the sun god Re. Think of the contrast. An Egyptian monument, built for the searing heat of the desert, now standing in the damp, freezing fog of a London midnight dot. The obelisk is flanked by two large bronze sphinx. Look closely at them. They aren't looking at the city. They are looking at the river. They are the eternal guardians of the water. In the yellow gaslight, the bronze of the sphinx takes on a greenish, ghostly hue, and the hieroglyphs seem to pulse with a hidden meaning. The needle is a time anchor, connecting the Victorian present to a past so distant it feels like a dream. On the river, the fog is a different creature than it is in the streets. There are no buildings to break it up, so it rolls in great, heavy banks. It is a moving wall of vapor dot as you watch. A bank of fog drifts across the river from the southern side. It moves with a slow, predatory grace. First, it swallows the lights of the distant warehouses. Then, it erases the middle of the river. Finally, it reaches the embankment, and you are suddenly alone in a white void. You can no longer see the water, but you can hear it. The sound is now intimate, right at your feet. The river feels closer, as if it is rising up to meet you. In this void, the smell of the water becomes overwhelming, the smell of wet stone, decaying wood, and the deep, cold earth. This is the true whisper of the Thames, the sound of a world that existed before light, and will exist after it. From somewhere downriver, toward the Isle of Dogs, a sound breaks the silence. It is the low, mournful moan of a foghorn. Hu on Ain. The sound is so deep, it vibrates in the granite wall you are leaning against. It is the voice of the industrial river, a warning to other ships that a giant is moving through the mist. The sound travels for miles, losing its sharp edges as it bounces off the water and the buildings. It sounds like the call of a prehistoric creature searching for its kind. It is followed by a long silence. Then, a smaller, higher-pitched whistle from a tugboat, a sharp peep-peep acknowledges the warning. This is the language of the river night, a conversation conducted in the dark, where sight is useless and sound is the only map dot as we prepare to leave the riverbank. The tide has reached its slack water point. This is the brief moment, lasting only a few minutes, when the tide has finished coming in, but has not yet begun to go out. The river becomes perfectly still. The slapping sound against the stone stops. The chains of the barges stop groaning. The water looks like solid glass. It is the most peaceful moment in the city's 24-hour cycle. Even the fog seems to hold its breath. This is the river's bedtime. For this short window, the Thames is no longer a highway or a sewer or a boundary. It is simply a quiet, ancient presence, resting before it begins the long, 6-hour journey back toward the sea. Step away from the granite wall now. Your boots make a soft sound on the damp pavement as you head back toward the amber glow of the street lamps. But the river stays with you. Imagine your thoughts are like the silt of the Thames slowly settling, layer by layer, into the quiet darkness. The whispers of the Thames are fading now, becoming a low white noise in the back of your mind. The ancient river, the silent witness, continues its journey, but you are heading toward yours. The stone of the embankment is behind you. The obsidian water is behind you. The sphinx continue their vigil in the mist. You are moving into the fluid world of sleep, where the boundaries between the past and the present, the stone and the water, finally dissolve. The tide is beginning to turn. The first ripples of the ebb are forming, but you are already far away, drifting on a different current dot. As you settle into your bed, imagine the sound of the retreating tide. It is a wet, sucking sound, a rhythmic squelch, as the riverbed is exposed to the freezing November air. The fog still clings to the surface of the mud, but it is thinner here, allowing the faint amber glow of the distant street lamps to reflect off the ripples of the silt dot. This is the foreshore. It is a place that belongs neither to the land nor the sea. It is a liminal space, a graveyard of lost things. And for a specific class of Victorian Londoners, it is a workplace. To walk upon the Thames shore is to walk upon the dissolved history of the city. The mud here is not like the mud of a country pond. It is a thick, viscous London clay mixed with centuries of soot, sewage, and salt. Imagine the sensation. It is a deep, dark gray, almost black in the moonlight. It has the consistency of heavy cream, but the weight of lead. As the water recedes, the mud releases a complex, earthy aroma. The smell of ancient timber, oxidized iron, and the sharp, briny tang of the sea. In 1888, this mud is a repository. Because it lacks oxygen, it preserves everything it swallows. Somewhere beneath the surface, a Roman coin sits perfectly preserved next to a broken Victorian gin bottle. The mud is the city's memory, and tonight, the scavengers are here to sift through those memories. Look through the mist toward the base of London Bridge. You see a small, dark figure. At first, you might mistake it for a piling or a piece of driftwood. But then the figure moves. It stoops. It reaches. This is a mudlark. In the hierarchy of Victorian poverty, the mudlarks are among the lowest, yet their work is a vital part of the city's ecology. Most are children, boys and girls, as young as 8, or the very elderly, those who can no longer find work in the factories or the docks. The mudlark's uniform is a study in survival. They wear tattered trousers rolled up to the knee, exposing legs that are stained a permanent earthy gray by the river. Their coats are oversized, filled with deep, reinforced pockets. Around their waist, they often tie a piece of old rope to hold a burlap sack or a wicker basket. They move with a curious, rhythmic gait, testing step. They never place their full weight down at once, for the mud is treacherous. They look for pockets, areas where the current has naturally deposited heavier objects. They are not looking for gold. They are looking for the mundane debris of an industrial empire. What does a mudlark find in the dead of night? To you or me, it would look like trash. To them, it is bread. The most common treasure is coal. As the great colliers and barges are unloaded at the wharves, lumps of sea coal inevitably fall overboard. A mudlark can gather 10 or 15 pounds of coal in a single tide. It is wet and sulfurous, but it can be sold for a few pennies to the poor tenements of the East End, providing a few hours of warmth. And there is junk, the Victorian term for old rope and cordage. Ships are constantly shedding bits of hemp and manila. These fibers can be unraveled and sold to be made into oakum, used for caulking the seams of wooden ships. They look for old iron, rusted nails from broken pallets, hinges from discarded crates, or the heavy copper bolts that were used to sheath the hulls of warships. Each piece is a fragment of the city's industry, returned to the mud and reclaimed by hand. On a lucky night, a mudlark might find a pig of lead or a fragment of brass, which could feed a family for a week. Watch the mudlark's movements. It is a slow, hypnotic dance. They bend at the waist, their eyes scanning the mud with a focus that a diamond cutter would envy. When they spot something, they don't grab it immediately. They poke it with a stick of office, usually a piece of driftwood or a broken umbrella handle, to see if it is solid. The sound of their work is very quiet. The soft plop of a hand entering the mud. The clink of a copper nail being dropped into a basket. The heavy, labored breathing of the scavenger in the cold air. There is a profound dignity in this silence. While the rest of the city sleeps in feather beds or under woolen blankets, these figures are engaged in a primitive, essential struggle. They are the human filters of the Thames, cleaning the riverbed one nail at a time. While the mudlarks stay on the open shore, there is another, more mysterious group of scavengers who emerge at low tide. These are the toshers, or sewer dash hunters. As we walk along the mud, we see the massive, dark mouths of the brick sewers where they empty into the Thames. These are the portals to a subterranean labyrinth. The toshers are men of legendary toughness. They don't just scavenge the mud. They enter the tunnels. A tosher wears a heavy, grease-covered leather coat and high water boots that reach the hip. But their most distinct tool is the sewer lamp. It is a small, candle-lit lantern strapped to their chest or held in the hand, often protected by a thick glass or wire mesh. As the tide goes out, the toshers move into the tunnels against the dwindling flow of waste. They are looking for tosh, jewelry, silver spoons, or coins that have fallen through the street grates above and been washed down into the dark. The sound of the toshers is a distant, echoing splash from within the brick arches. Their world is one of miasma, the thick, foul-smelling air of the sewers, and the constant rustle of thousands of rats. Yet they are known to be the wealthiest of the scavengers. A skilled tosher knows the geometry of the flow. He knows exactly where the brickwork curves, causing heavy objects like gold rings to settle in the silt. Henry Mayhew, the great chronicler of London's poor in the mid-19th century, once described the mudlarks as looking like pieces of the river itself. And he was right. They are camouflaged by the very earth they mine. But listen to the boring historical details that make this world real. In 1888, the river is significantly more polluted than it is today. The Great Stink of 1858 is a memory, but the water is still a chemical soup. The mudlarks suffer from river itch, a skin condition caused by the constant contact with the toxic silt. Yet they are also the city's first archaeologists. Because they spend their lives looking at the mud, they are the ones who find the Roman tesserae, small mosaic tiles, and the medieval pilgrim badges. They don't see them as history. They see them as curios to be sold to the antiquarians who haunt the shops of Fleet Street. The mudlark is the bridge between the forgotten past and the collectors of the present. Scavenging. The shore is a race against time. The Thames is a patient but relentless enemy. The EB lasts for about 6 hours, but the flood, the incoming tide, can be surprisingly swift. As the tide begins to turn, the sound of the river changes. The hiss of the retreating water is replaced by a low, rhythmic lapping. The mudlarks know this sound instinctively. It is the sound of the door closing. The greatest danger isn't drowning in the open water. It is the mud trap. Occasionally, a scavenger will step into a pocket of quick silt, a mixture of water and fine sand that acts like a vacuum. If they are alone in the midnight mist, and the tide begins to rise, the situation becomes a silent, terrifying struggle. In our story, however, the scavengers are masters of the shore. They move with the confidence of mountain goats. As the first inch of water creeps back over the gravel, the mudlark stands up, stretches their aching back, and begins the long climb back up the water-stairs, above the mud, on the dry embankments and the narrow alleys of the wharves, are the bone grubbers. These scavengers don't look for coal or iron. They look for organic matter. In the 1880s, nothing was wasted. Animal bones found in the gutters or near the slaughterhouses were collected and sold to the bone boilers. The grease was extracted for soap, and the bone itself was ground into bone meal for fertilizer or used to make handles for knives. The rag pickers, too, move through the shadows. They look for scraps of linen and cotton. In a world before wood pulp paper was common, the paper industry of England ran on rags. Every scrap of a discarded shirt or a frayed curtain was collected, washed, and turned back into the pristine white pages of a gentleman's journal. These scavengers are the ultimate recyclers. They represent the rhythms of reuse that defined the Victorian age. The city was a giant machine that consumed resources at one end and exhaled waste at the other, and the scavengers lived in the exhaust, turning that waste back into wealth. As the mudlark reaches the top of the stairs, the night's work is done. But the scavenger economy doesn't sleep. In a small, dimly lit courtyard near the Pool of London, a dolly shop or a marine store dealer might still be open. Here, the night's finds are weighed. The coal is piled. The iron is sorted. The copper is tested with a drop of acid. The transaction is quite a few copper pennies, a crust of bread, or a voucher for a night's lodging in a penny hang. The scavenger disappears back into the fog of the East End, their body exhausted, but their pockets slightly heavier. The river has provided for another day. Think of the visual beauty of this scene as you drift closer to sleep. The shore at 2 a.m. is a study in monochromatic tones, the black of the deep water, the silver of the wet mud, the gray of the fog, the amber of the distant gaslight. The geometry is organic. The ripples in the mud mimic the waves of the sea. The tracks of the mudlarks are like the paths of birds on a beach, temporary, fragile, and soon to be erased. It is a world of constant motion and constant vanishing. Now, the tide is fully in motion. The flood has returned. The mud flats are being covered. The pockets of history are being resealed by a new layer of silt. The water rises over the water stairs, step by step, drowning the green moss and the rusted iron rings. The scavengers are gone. The shore is empty. The Thames has reclaimed its secrets. The river looks once again like that obsidian mirror we saw before. It is smooth, powerful, and deceptive. It hides the fact that just an hour ago, children were walking upon its floor, mining the debris of centuries. As you lie in the warmth of your room, let the image of the mudlark fade. Their struggle is over for tonight, and so is yours. The sound of the water is now a distant, soothing hum. The whispers of the Thames have returned to a steady, rhythmic pulse. The mud is hidden. The iron is buried. The history of the shore is tucked away beneath the cold, dark current. Your mind is like the river at high tide full, calm and still. The scavengers of your thoughts, the worries and tasks of the day, have retreated. They have climbed the stairs and disappeared into the mist. What remains is the peace of the water, the silence of the stone, the heavy, comforting weight of the night. Sleep now, as the Thames flows on, a silent witness to the city's dreams. The tide will go out again tomorrow, but for now, the world is deep and dark, and perfectly at rest. As you settle deeper into your pillow, imagine the transition from the riverbank back into the heart of the city. The ground rises slightly here, a gentle slope known as Ludgate Hill. The air feels thinner, colder, and even more silent. The bustle of the docks is a memory. The only sound is the rhythmic, distant drip of condensation falling from a stone cornice onto a lead roof. Ahead of you, the fog thickens, but it does not hide everything. Instead, it acts as a curtain, slowly parting to reveal a shape so vast, so heavy, and so silent that it feels like a mountain made of thought. You are standing before St. Paul's Cathedral, in the year 1888. St. Paul's is not the pale, sandy color we see in the 21st century. It is a masterpiece of Victorian contrast. To understand this, we must look at the stone itself. Portland stone. This is an oolitic limestone, quarried from the Isle of Portland in Dorset. It was Sir Christopher Wren's favorite material, a stone that is easy to carve when first quarried, but hardens into an indestructible shield when exposed to the air. But in the 19th century, the Pea-Souper fogs we discussed earlier have performed a slow, chemical transformation on the building. Where the rain hits the stone, it is washed a brilliant, ghostly white. But where the stone is protected from the rain, under the carvings of cherubs, beneath the massive Corinthian columns, and in the deep recesses of the friezes, the coal soot has accumulated in a thick, velvety black crust. In the midnight mist, the cathedral looks like a giant charcoal drawing. It is a building of light and shadow, a monochromatic sentinel that seems to vibrate with its own internal gravity. As you walk toward the west front, the massive twin towers rise above you like the cliffs of a canyon, disappearing into the yellow vapor at their peaks. Now, tilt your head back. Above the towers, almost entirely swallowed by the fog, sits the dome. In 1888, it is the highest point in the London skyline. It is a mathematical miracle. Christopher Wren did not build just one dome. He built three. There is the inner brick cone, which supports the heavy stone lantern at the very top. There is the inner dome, painted with the life of St. Paul, which you see from the floor inside. And then there is the outer dome, the one we see now made of timber and covered in sheets of heavy, dull lead. Listen to the wind as it circles the dome. It makes a low, hollow whistling sound, a Aeolian harp effect created by the massive stone balustrades. The lead of the dome is cold. It has absorbed the chill of the North Sea winds. In the darkness, the lead doesn't shine. It absorbs the light of the distant gas lamps, looking like a giant dark bell waiting to be struck. Inside that dome is the famous Whispering Gallery. Even from outside, you can imagine the physics of it. Because the wall is a perfect circle, and the stone is so smooth, a whisper made on one side travels around the circumference to be heard perfectly on the other. At midnight, the entire city of London feels like a whispering gallery. Because the streets are empty and the fog dampens the high-frequency noises, the low-frequency sounds travel for miles. You can hear the distant strike of a clock at St. Mary le Bow, followed seconds later by the response from St. Bride's. The architecture is talking to itself. The stone towers are sharing the secrets of the sleeping millions. St. Paul's is the father of the city, but it is surrounded by his children, the 51 parish churches built by Wren after the Great Fire of 1606. As we walk away from the cathedral and into the narrow lanes like Waddling Street and Bow Lane. These spires appear out of the mist like ghostly needles. Each one is different. St. Vadist alias Foster with its strange, concave surfaces that catch the shadows. St. Mary Le Bow, whose bells define what it means to be a Cockney. St. Bride's on Fleet Street, with its tiered spire that looks like a wedding cake. The geometry of these spires is a study in verticality. In the 1880s, London is still a low-rise city. Most buildings are only 4 or 5 stories tall. These white stone spires are the only things that pierce the fog. They are the masts of a stone fleet, sailing through a sea of vapor. The mist curls around the weather vanes, the golden dragons, the keys and the crosses. They turn slowly, creaking on rusted iron pivots, marking a wind you can't even feel at street level. Wait for it. The silence is about to be broken. High in the southwest tower of St. Paul's hangs Great Paul. Cast in 1881, it is the largest bell in England, weighing nearly 17 tons. As the clock reaches the quarter hour, the quarter jacks strike their smaller bells. Ting, 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 ting. It is a light, silver sound, but then comes the hour. The great hammer, moved by the massive iron gears of the clockwork, strikes the rim of Great Paul. The sound is not a note. It is a physical wave. You feel it in the soles of your feet, through the granite pavement. It ripples through the fog, vibrating the glass in the nearby warehouse windows. Because the air is so damp and heavy, the sound doesn't dissipate. It lingers. It creates a hum that lasts for nearly 30 seconds after the strike. This is the heartbeat of the architecture of silence. It is a reminder that the city is governed by time, not the frantic digital time of the future, but the slow, heavy, mechanical time of the Victorian age. Look up at the pediment of the cathedral. There, carved in high relief, is the phoenix, the bird rising from the ashes, symbolizing London's rebirth after the fire. Above it stand the statues of the apostles, St. Paul in the center, flanked by St. Peter and St. James. In the 1888 fog. These statues look like living people who have been turned to stone while watching the city. They are 12 feet tall, but from the street they look like weary watchers in the sky. Their stone robes are heavy with soot. Their hands are raised in silent blessings over the dark alleys and the gin palaces. There is an eerie realism to them. In the flickering light of a distant lamp, you might swear you saw St. Peter's hand move or St. Paul's head tilt to listen to the river. They are the silent inhabitants of the upper air, the only witnesses to the true height of the mist. Behind the cathedral lies Paternoster Row. In the daytime, this is the heart of the world's publishing trade, a place of frantic energy, paper, and ink. But at midnight, it is an architectural canyon. The buildings here are tall and narrow, built of dark brick and stone. The smell here is unique. It is the smell of old parchment, bindery glue, and the faint, sweet scent of tea from the nearby warehouses. The silence here is profound. The architecture of silence isn't just about the absence of noise. It's about the presence of weight. Thousands of tons of books are stacked behind these dark windows. The collective knowledge of the British Empire, resting in the dark. The buildings seem to lean toward each other, as if whispering the contents of the volumes they hold. The architecture doesn't stop at the ground. Beneath your feet, The cathedral has a forest of its own. The crypt of St. Paul's is the largest in Europe. It is a mirrored city of stone pillars and low, groined arches dot down there. In the absolute darkness lie the heroes of the age, the Duke of Wellington in his massive sarcophagus of Cornish porphyry, and Admiral Nelson in his tomb of black marble dot. Think of the geometry of the building as a whole. It is a giant I-beam of history. The massive weight of the dome is pushed down through the pillars, into the crypt, and deep into the London clay. The building is anchored to the earth by the weight of its own silence. As you walk above it, you can almost feel the cold, still air of the crypt rising through the iron floor dash. Great dot in 1888. The city is undergoing a change. New office buildings for banks and insurance companies are being built. They are using a new material, steel frames hidden behind stone facades. These buildings are the Goliaths of the new age. They are square, blocky, and lack the grace of Wren's spires. They create deep wind tunnels in the narrow alleys. As the mist flows through these gaps, it creates fog eddies, swirling vortexes of vapor that look like ghosts dancing in the street. The old architecture, the churches and the cathedral stands in contrast to this new, commercial geometry. The churches are built for the sky. The banks are built for the earth. In the midnight fog, however, they all become one. A jagged, dark silhouette against the gray-yellow clouds. Almost every church spire we see has a small, iron-fenced yard at its base. These are the ancient burial grounds, many of them closed since the mid-century due to overcrowding in 1888. These are tiny pockets of old London. The iron railings are tangled with ivy that has turned black from the soot. The headstones are leaning at impossible angles, their inscriptions worn away by 200 years of acid rain. The geometry of the churchyard is a mess of crooked lines. It is the only place where the Victorian obsession with straightness fails. These yards are the silent gardens, where the roots of the city's past are still entwined with the foundations of the spires. When the wind moves through the ivy, it makes a dry, papery sound, the rustle of the dead in a city of stone. Look back at the top of St. Paul's dome. Above the lead, above the stone, is the golden gallery and the lantern. On some nights, the fog is so low that the lantern actually sits above the clouds. Imagine being the night watchman up there. You would be standing on a small stone platform, looking out over a sea of yellow-white wool. The city would be invisible. You would see only the tips of the tallest spire St. Bride's, St. Mary le Bow, and the towers of Westminster poking through the mist like the masts of sunken ships. It is a world of absolute isolation. Up there, the architecture of silence is literal. The sounds of the horses and the river cannot reach you. There is only the stars, the cold stone, and the vast, breathing ocean of the fog below. As we walk back down Ludgate Hill, leaving the great cathedral behind, the silence begins to change. We are descending back into the living city. The scale of the buildings begins to shrink. The massive Portland stone blocks are replaced by the humble London stock bricks. But the influence of the spires remains. Every time you look back, you see a glimpse of a tower or a dome. A reminder that the city is not just a collection of houses, but a cathedral of history. The mist is beginning to settle more heavily now, as the small hours of the morning approach. The ghostly spires are being swallowed one by one. First the weather vanes disappear, then the belfries, then the stone bases. Soon, only St. Paul's remains a dark, heavy thumbprint on the sky dot as you drift towards sleep. Imagine yourself as one of those stones in the cathedral wall. You are heavy. You are cold. You are perfectly still. The architecture of silence has entered your mind. The frantic thoughts of the day are like the swirling mist. They move, they change, they vanish. But your core is like the Portland stone, solid, enduring, and quiet. The bells have finished their tolling. The lead dome is resting under the weight of the night. The apostles on the roof have finished their vigil. The city of stone is at peace, and so are you. The spires are now just shadows in your dreams. The geometry of the city is dissolving into a soft, monochromatic blur. There is no more distance to walk, no more heights to climb. Sleep now in the shadow of the giants. The silence is your blanket. The stone is your foundation. As you settle into the soft landscape of your bed, imagine the transition from the freezing, damp air of the street to a sudden amber-colored glow. You are walking down a narrow alleyway near Drury Lane. The fog here is thick, but it is being fought back by the light of a large, etched glass window. This is the nighttime economy of the Victorian stomach. In 1888, millions of Londoners live in rooms without kitchens, without ovens, and sometimes without even a hearth. For them, the street is their dining room, and the night is when the most mysterious and comforting flavors emerge. Before us stands a gin palace. To the modern eye, it is a pub, but to the Victorian, it is a cathedral of the poor. In a city of gray soot and yellow fog, the gin palace is a riot of color and reflection. Look at the exterior. The windows are massive plates of expensive glass, etched with intricate patterns of ferns, lions, and fleur-de-lis. This glass serves a purpose. It allows the light from within to spill onto the sidewalk, acting as a beacon, while obscuring the identities of those drinking inside. As you push open the heavy mahogany doors, a wave of warmth hits you. It is a complex, heavy atmosphere. The first thing you notice is the smell. It is not just the scent of alcohol. It is a tapestry of the 19th century. There is the sharp, pine-like tang of juniper berries from the gin, the sweet, earthy aroma of dark Korean rum, and the heavy, yeasty scent of porter ale. Underneath it all is the smell of damp wool coats drying by the gaslight, and the clean, woody scent of fresh sawdust scattered across the floor to soak up the night's spills. The heart of the palace is the bar. It is a long, curving stretch of polished mahogany, worn smooth by the friction of a million sleeves. Behind it stands a gantry, a towering structure of shelves reaching toward the ceiling, mirrored at the back to make the collection of bottles look infinite. In the 1880s, gin is not just a drink. It is a social lubricant and a medicine. It is stored in massive, ornate porcelain barrels called vats, decorated with gold leaf and blue floral patterns. Each vat has a silver tap. Watch the barman in his crisp white apron and rolled-up sleeves. He moves with a rhythmic precision. He pulls a silver handle, and the gin flows into a small, thick-bottomed glass. There is no ice here. The drink is served at the temperature of the room, or perhaps slightly chilled by the cellar's dampness. The light in here is extraordinary. Because of the mirrors and the polished brass rails, the flickering gaslight is multiplied 1,000 times. Every bottle, every glass, and every brass button on a customer's coat creates a tiny spark. For the laborer who spent 12 hours in a dark coal cellar or a damp dockyard, this is the only palace, they will ever know dot as we walk along the bar. Look for the snob screens. These are small, hinged partitions made of etched glass and carved wood, set at eye level on the bar counter. Their purpose is a fascinating piece of boring history. They allowed a gentleman of higher standing to drink his gin without having to make eye contact with the laborer standing right next to him. You could swivel the screen to create a private booth for one dot at midnight. These screens are often pushed back. In the fog of 1888, the rigid class structures of the day softened slightly. A weary journalist from the Daily Telegraph might find himself leaning against the same brass rail as a tosher we met at the river. They are united by the warmth, the light, and the amber liquid in their glasses dot. We leave the gin palace and walk a few doors down to a pie and mash shop. If the gin palace is a temple of light, the pie shop is a sanctuary of steam. The window of the shop is steamed over, but through a clear patch, you can see rows of golden brown crusts. Step inside. The air here is thick and humid, smelling of roasted meat, onions, and the heavy, comforting scent of baking dough dot. In the center of the shop is the great coal-fired oven. It is a massive iron beast, built into the brickwork of the wall. The door is thick and blackened by soot. Every time the pie man opens it with his long iron shovel, a blast of dry heat radiates through the room, momentarily clearing the damp chill from your bones. The penny pie is the staple of the Victorian night. To understand its history, we must look at its construction. The crust is made from suet, the hard fat from around the kidneys of cattle. This makes the pastry incredibly dense and caloric, designed to provide energy for a body that has to fight the cold. Inside, the pie is a mixture of mutton, older sheep, or beef skirt, heavily seasoned with black pepper and salt. But the most important element is the liquor. This is not alcohol, but a thick green parsley gravy. It is made from the water used to boil eels, common and cheap protein from the Thames dot. Watch the customer, perhaps, a link boy, taking a break from the fog. He holds the pie in a piece of greased paper. He doesn't use a fork. He eats it with his hands, the steam rising in a small cloud around his face. This is the gastronomy of the night, functional, heavy, and deeply satisfying. It is the food of the industrial machine. On the counter of the shop sit large glass bowls filled with jellied eels. These are discs of eel, cooked in a spiced stock that sets into a clear, firm jelly as it cools. In the 1880s, this is the fast food of London. It is cold, salty, and provides a sharp contrast to the hot. Heavy pie dot. If we step back out into the street, we encounter another nocturnal gastronome, the chestnut vendor. He stands on the street corner, hunched over a brazier, a perforated iron bucket filled with glowing red coals. On top of the coals is a flat iron plate covered with chestnuts. Each chestnut has a small X carved into its skin to prevent it from exploding in the heat. The sound of the chestnut stall is one of the most peaceful sounds of the night. Pop, crackle, hiss. The smell is heavenly, a sweet, smoky, nutty aroma that cuts through the sulfur of the fog. The vendor scoops a dozen hot nuts into a paper cone made from yesterday's standard newspaper. As you hold the cone, the heat seeps through the paper and into your frozen fingers. This is not just food. It is a portable heater dot. At the edge of the market, near Covent Garden, stands a night coffee stall. This is a large wooden cart on wheels, covered by a canvas awning. This stall is the rival to the Gin Palace. It is run by the temperance movements or private entrepreneurs who realized that the night workers of London, the printers, the policemen, and the cab drivers needed caffeine more than alcohol. The centerpiece of the stall is a massive, polished copper urn with a brass tap. It sits over a small charcoal stove, keeping the coffee at a perpetual tongue-scorching boil. This isn't the artisanal coffee of the modern world. It is Victorian coffee, thick, bitter, and often stretched with chicory or roasted acorns. It is served in mugged houses, heavy, thick-walled ceramic mugs that can survive being dropped on the cobblestones. The sugar is kept in a large tin, and the milk comes from a churn that was delivered by rail just a few hours ago. Beside the coffee, the stall sells soup. This is a strange, ancient Victorian drink made from the powdered roots of orchids or the bark of the sassafras tree, thickened with milk and sugar. It has a medicinal, root beer-like flavor. It is the sleepy time drink of the 19th century, believed to soothe the nerves of those who have spent too long in the mist. As we approach 3 a.m., the gastronomy of the night begins to shift from consumption to distribution. We reach Covent Garden. In the darkness, the great glass and iron market halls are a hive of quiet, rhythmic activity. This is where the city's food arrives before the sun. Heavy wagons, pulled by teams of 4 Shire horses, arrive from the farms of Kent and Essex. They are piled high with baskets, wicker crates filled with cabbages, carrots, and potatoes. The sound here is a low, rolling thunder of wheels and the rhythmic thud of heavy crates being stacked. The air smells of damp earth, bruised leaves, and the sharp, citrus scent of oranges imported from Spain. This is the green heart of the night. The porters, wearing donkey frocks, heavy leather shoulder pads, carry stacks of 6 or 7 baskets on their heads with the balance of acrobats. They move through the fog with a singular purpose: to feed the 4 million people who will wake up in a few hours. Inside the market, there is a small, hole-in-the-wall eating house that serves the porters. It is a room of bare wooden tables and benches. There is no decoration. The walls are stained with years of steam and smoke. Here, the gastronomy of the night is at its most silent. The men eat in a state of exhaustion. They eat plum duff, a heavy, boiled suet pudding filled with raisins, and drink gunpowder tea. There is no conversation, only the sound of heavy boots on the floor and the clatter of tin spoons. This is the fuel of the empire. The energy required to move the mountains of vegetables and fruit is provided by these midnight meals. It is a cycle of labor and calories that has remained unchanged for generations. As we walk away from the market and back into the quieter residential streets, the smells of the night begin to fade. The chestnut brazier is dying down to a dull orange glow. The pie shop is closing its shutters. The Gin Palace has turned out its great gas chandeliers, leaving only a single pilot light flickering behind the etched glass. The gastronomy of the night is a fleeting thing. It exists only in the shadows. By 8 a.m., the smells of gin, suet, and eel liquor will be replaced by the smell of morning coal smoke and horse-dash manure. But for us, in our midnight vigil, these flavors are the landmarks of the city. They are the warmth in the cold geometry of the Victorian street. They represent the human need for comfort in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. Think of the street now, not as a collection of stones, but as a map of what has been eaten. Near the Gin Palace, there are the discarded lemon peels from the punches. Near the pie shop, a few stray crumbs of suet pastry are being discovered by a bold London sparrow. Near the coffee stall, a damp patch on the stones marks where a weary driver spilled his essay loop dot. These are the tiny, boring details that make the history real. The city is a living organism that eats, breathes, and sleeps. And tonight, we have seen it at its most intimate, gathered around the copper urn and the coal-fired oven dot as you lie there. Imagine the warmth of the pie shop still lingering in your mind. The heavy, comforting scent of the baking bread. The rhythmic hiss of the coffee urn. The amber glow of the etched glass. The gastronomy of the night has done its work. The workers are fed. The drinkers are warmed. The city's stomach is full, and the rhythm of the night is slowing down once again. You, too, are full of the stories and textures of this ancient world. The flavors are fading into the mist. The juniper and the suet, the coffee and the chestnuts, they are all becoming part of the soft, monochromatic dream of 1888. The braziers are cool. The mahogany bars are polished and empty. The mahogany doors are locked. Sleep now, with the warmth of the hearth in your heart. The fog is wrapping around the buildings like a soft, woolen blanket. There is nothing left to taste, nothing left to smell, only the deep, restorative quiet of a world that has been satisfied. Adjust your covers one final time. Imagine the world above the yellow fog, the flickering gaslight, and the rhythmic clip-clop of the hansom cabs, becoming a distant, muffled echo. We are moving downward. We are passing through the layers of London's history, through the debris of Roman Londinium and the medieval mud, until we reach the great, hollow arteries of the 19th century. In 1888, London is a city with two faces. Above, there is the grandeur of the empire. Below, there is a brick-and-mortar labyrinth of such scale and complexity that it was called the eighth wonder of the world. To understand this hidden world, we must speak of Sir Joseph Bazalgette. Before the 1860s, London was choking on its own waste. The Thames was an open sewer, and the city was dying of cholera. Bazalgette's solution was a feat of monumental geometry. He didn't just build pipes. He built an underground cathedral for the city's lifeblood. As we descend a narrow iron ladder set into the brickwork of an interceptor sewer, the first thing you notice is the change in temperature. The freezing dampness of a November night is replaced by a heavy, humid warmth. This is the breath of the city, the collective heat of 4 million people, trapped in a subterranean vault. The air here is thick. It carries the scent of wet lime, old bricks, and the unmistakable, earthy tang of the lost rivers. But beneath the smell is a sound a sound so constant and deep that it feels like a vibration in your marrow. It is the sound of rushing water. Look at the walls of the tunnel. They are not square. They are shaped like an inverted egg whiter at the top, narrower at the bottom. This is Bazalgette's geometry. The design is brilliant in its boringness. When the water level is low, the narrow bottom ensures the flow remains fast enough to be self-scouring, preventing the silt from settling. When the heavy rains come, the wide top provides the volume necessary to prevent the city from flooding. The bricks are Staffordshire Blues vitrified bricks fired at such high temperatures that they are almost as hard as iron and completely waterproof. They are laid in a perfect running bond, each joint thin and precise. In the light of our lantern, the walls glisten with a layer of condensation, looking like the scales of a vast sleeping serpent that stretches from the West End all the way to the marshes of Croessness as we walk along the narrow brick benching beside the flow. We reach a junction where a smaller tunnel joins the main interceptor. This is the River Fleet. Once, this was a wide, navigable river where Viking ships docked. By 1888, it has been imprisoned. It flows within a massive brick archway, a cloaca maxima of the Victorian age. You can hear the fleet before you see it. It makes a hollow, echoing roar, a sound of ancient water resentful of its cage. There is a strange, haunting beauty here. The stalactites of calcium carbonate hang from the ceiling like ghostly fingers, formed by the lime leaching out of the mortar over decades. The water is dark, swirling in eddies that mimic the currents of the Thames above. Here, the hidden labyrinth is a map of London's lost geography. The Tyburn, the Walbrook, the Ephrathite are all here, flowing in the dark, their names forgotten by the people walking on the sidewalks 20 feet above. You are not alone in the labyrinth. Listen to the walls. There is a persistent, dry rustle, the sound of thousands of tiny claws on brick. These are the brown rats of London. In the sewers, they are the undisputed kings. They move in rhythmic waves, their eyes catching the glint of our light for a split second before they vanish into the weepholes of the brickwork. But there are humans here, too. We saw the toshers on the riverbanks, but here we see them in their element. They move through the smaller branch sewers with a hunched, rhythmic shuffle. They carry pole hooks to stir the silt, looking for tosh, the silver coins, the gold wedding rings, and the copper tokens that have slipped through the cracks of the world. Above the tosher's life is governed by the clock of the tide. They know that when the Thames rises, the sewer flaps will close, and the tunnels will begin to fill. Their survival depends on a perfect understanding of the city's hydraulic geometry. They are the human gills of London, breathing the foul air and finding wealth in the waste. If we follow the flow eastward, we eventually reach the terminus. This is not a dark tunnel, but a subterranean palace. This is the Croessness pumping station. Imagine a room the size of a cathedral, supported by ornate cast-iron columns, painted in vibrant reds, golds, and blues. In the center sit the four giants, the beam engines named Victoria, Prince Consort, Albert Edward, and Alexandra. The geometry here is mechanical. The massive flywheels, 27 feet in diameter, turn with a slow, hypnotic grace. Whir-thump, whir-thump. Each stroke of the piston lifts thousands of gallons of waste, pushing it into the settling reservoirs. This is the boring history at its most majestic. The Victorians decorated their sewers with the same fervor they decorated their churches. The ironwork is covered in carvings of oak leaves and fruit. Why? Because they believed that even the most invisible work should be done to the glory of progress. As you listen to the rhythmic pulse of the beam engines, you are hearing the heartbeat of the modern city. But the labyrinth is not just for water. If we move toward the district of St. Martin's-le-Grand, we encounter a different kind of tunnel. These are the pneumatic dispatch tubes. In 1888, the Royal Mail experimented with air power. Imagine a small, cramped tunnel, just 4 feet high, made of cast iron segments bolted together. Inside, small cars filled with letters and parcels are sucked through the darkness by giant vacuum pumps at the other end. The sound here is a ghostly, high-pitched hiss. It is the sound of the wind being harnessed. The geometry is a perfect circle, a black hole that stretches toward Euston Station. It is a silent, invisible postman, moving the thoughts and business of the empire beneath the hooves of the horses. Beside the sewers and the mail tubes, there are the nerves. These are the telegraph cables. Hundreds of copper wires wrapped in gutta percha, a natural latex from the Malayan forests, are bundled into iron pipes. These wires carry the pulse of information. The stock prices from the city, the news from the frontiers of India, and the private telegrams of lovers all hum through these dark tunnels. If you were to press your ear against the iron pipe, you might imagine you could hear the frantic click-click tap of the Morse code keys. The geometry of the cables is a tangled web, a subterranean brain that coordinates the movements of the world's largest empire. It is a silent electrical labyrinth that mirrors this physical labyrinth of the brick sewers. There is a darker side to the architecture of the underground. In 1888, London is still dealing with the geometry of the dead. Before the great suburban cemeteries were built, the city's parish vaults were packed to the ceiling in places like Enon Chapel. The underground was separated from the living only by a few floorboards. Thousands of coffins were stacked in the dark. The miasma, the heavy, sweet smell of decay, would seep up into the pews during Sunday service. As we walk through the tunnels near the old churchyards, the brickwork often changes. It becomes older, rougher. We are passing through the bone vaults. It is a reminder that the city is built on layers of its own ancestors. The labyrinth is not just a utility. It is an OSSUARY. Deep within the system, there are places where the water stops moving. These are the sumps, the low points where the silt collects. Here, the silence is absolute. The air is perfectly still. The only sound is the occasional drip, drip, drop of water from a cracked brick, echoing in the darkness like a slow-motion clock. The water in the sump is like black glass. It reflects nothing, for there is no light. This is the 0 point of London. It is the place where the city's energy finally comes to rest. In our boring history, this is the ultimate place of peace. There are no horses here, no fog, no politics. There is only the steady, heavy weight of the earth and the slow, geological process of the silt settling. How do these tunnels survive the weight of the city above? The secret lies in the arch. Every tunnel we have seen is an arch, a geometric shape that distributes the weight of the buildings, the cobblestones, and the millions of people into the surrounding soil. The Victorians were masters of the civil engineering of pressure. They understood that the city was a crushing weight, and they built the labyrinth to be its skeleton. As you lie in your bed, imagine that skeleton, the millions of blue bricks, the miles of iron pipes, the stone vaults holding everything up. It is a stable, unmoving world. As we prepare to ascend back to the surface, we pass one more tunnel. It is a new tunnel, circular, and lined with cast iron segments. This is the City and South London Railway, the world's first deep-level electric tube. In 1888, it is a miracle of the future. It doesn't smell of water or waste. It smells of ozone and electricity. It is the final layer of the labyrinth, the one that will eventually turn the hidden world into a highway for the masses. The boring history of the sewers is about to meet the frantic history of the subway. We reach the iron ladder. We climb slowly, the air growing colder and fresher with every rung. We push open a heavy iron manhole cover in a quiet alley near St. James's Park. The The click of the iron cover falling back into place is the final note of our journey. We are back on the surface. The yellow fog is still there. The gaslight is still flickering. The Pea-Souper still reigns, but you know the truth now. You know that beneath the Pea-Souper is a world of brick cathedrals and rushing rivers. You know that the city has a belly, a nervous system, and a memory dot as you drift into sleep. Imagine the labyrinth below you. It is a warm, humming, and rhythmic world. It is the foundation of your rest. The rushing water of the fleet is now just the sound of a distant rain. The whirr-thump of the beam engines is the rhythm of your own breathing. The earth is heavy. The bricks are solid. The labyrinth is silent. The city above is sleeping, and the city below is doing the work for it. You can let go now. The geometry is holding. The skeleton is strong dot as you settle into the final layers of your sleep. Let your breathing slow to match the pace of a man walking a beat. This is not a hurried walk. It is a methodical, deliberate measurement of the city. Imagine a figure emerging from the sulphurous yellow fog of 1888. He is tall, made taller by a high reinforced pillbox hat or a heavy felt helmet. He is wrapped in a multi-caped greatcoat of thick navy wool that seems to absorb the dampness of the night. This is the Metropolitan Police Constable. To the underworld, he is the law. To the sleeping inhabitants of the grand houses, he is the night watchman. To us, he is the human metronome of the Victorian night. Every constable is assigned a beat, a specific sequence of streets, alleys, and squares that he must traverse. In 1888, the geometry of the beat is a sacred thing. He must walk it at a pace of exactly 2.5 miles per hour. Not faster, not slower dot. Listen to the sound of his boots. These are not the light shoes of a clerk. They are heavy, iron-shod ammunition boots, designed to last for 1,000 miles of granite. Crunch, stomp, crunch, stomp. The sound is rhythmic and predictable. If you were a resident sleeping in a basement flat, you would come to rely on that sound. It is the toll of the night watchman, a signal that, for this hour at least, all is well dot as he walks. He performs a ritual of the hands. He does not just look at the houses. He touches them. Every few yards, he reaches out and tests a doorknob. He shakes the iron. Clack clink. If the bolt is firm, he moves on. If a gate is unlatched, he pauses. The night watchman is the master of the threshold. He ensures the boundary between the public street and the private sanctuary remains sealed. Hanging from his sturdy leather belt is his most important tool, the bull's-eye lantern. It is a heavy tin box with a thick convex glass lens. Inside, a small oil lamp flickers behind a sliding shutter. Most of the time, the lantern is dark. The shutter is closed. The constable moves through the fog as a shadow among shadows. But occasionally, he hears a sound, the scrape of a boot in a mews, the rustle of a silk dress in a dark archway. With a practiced flick of his thumb, he slides the shutter. A brilliant, narrow finger of white light pierces the yellow fog. The beam is concentrated, revealing the texture of the brick, the glint of a brass knocker, or the startled eyes of a stray cat. This beam is the eye of the law. It doesn't illuminate the world. It interrogates it. Then, just as quickly, the shutter slides back. The world returns to its monochromatic amber, and the constable moves on. Crunch, stomp, crunch, stomp dot in 1888. The police are in a state of technological transition. For decades, the night watchman carried a rattle, a large wooden device that, when spun, created a deafening, rhythmic clack, clack, clack that could be heard for blocks. It was the sound of an emergency, a call for help that tore through the silence of the night. But now, our constable carries something new, the Metropolitan whistle. It is a small tube of polished nickel-plated brass. It has a high, piercing frequency designed to cut through the heavy density of a Pea-Souper fog dot. The whistle is rarely used. To blow the whistle is to admit that the architecture of silence has been broken. It is the final resort. Most of the night is spent in a state of preemptive quiet. The constable's mere presence, the silhouette of his helmet in the mist, is usually enough to keep the shadows in their place. Every hour, the constable must reach a fixed point, a specific street corner, or a bridge foot where he meets his sergeant. This is the boring history of the night. They stand in the fog for precisely 2 minutes. The sergeant, a man with more silver lace on his sleeves and a deeper weariness in his eyes, checks the constable's beat book. No words are usually exchanged. A nod, a scribble of a pencil, and they part ways. This meeting is the anchor of the night. It ensures that the entire city, from the slums of Spitalfields to the mansions of Belgravia, is covered by a grid of human observation. It is a vast, invisible net cast over the metropolis, held in place by these brief, silent meetings on street corners. In the autumn of 1888, the night watchman's toll is heavier than usual. The East End is gripped by a specialized kind of terror. The Whitechapel murders have turned the fog into a predator. Our constable, patrolling the docks or the narrow lanes of Aldgate, feels a tension that the West End officers do not. He is not just looking for unlatched doors. He is looking for the unseen. He knows every court and rent, the tiny, dead-end alleys that honeycomb the district. He knows that the fog can hide a man standing just 3 feet away. He relies on his ears. He listens for the missing sounds. He knows that when the crickets in the cellar walls stop chirping, or when a horse in a stable blocks away whinnies in alarm, something is moving in the dark. The night watchman is a sensory expert. He reads the city like a blind man reads Braille, feeling the vibrations of the night through the soles of his boots. Even the law gets cold. In the deepest hour, the constable might find a friendly hearth, perhaps a night porter at a grand hotel or a watchman at a construction site has a small coal brazier burning. The constable might pause for a moment strictly against regulations to thaw his capes. He stands with his back to the heat, the steam rising from his navy wool coat. He drinks a mug of gunpowder tea, hot and bitter. For those 5 minutes, he is not the eye of the law. He is just a man whose fingers are numb and whose feet ache. He looks at the coals, their orange glow reflecting in his polished brass buttons. Then he checks his pocket watch, a heavy silver turnip, and steps back into the freezing mist. The ritual must continue. The beat must be walked. If the constable finds a disturber of the peace, perhaps a drunkard who has fallen, asleep in a doorway, or a cracksman with a bag of skeleton keys, rhythm of the night changes. He leads the prisoner to the local station house. These are grim, functional buildings of gray stone. Inside, the air smells of ink, floor wax, and cold iron. The duty sergeant sits at a high desk, writing in a massive, Leather-bound, charred sheet. The prisoner is taken to the cells. Here, the architecture is designed for silence. The walls are thick brick. The doors are solid oak with iron spy holes. Once the key turns in the lock, a heavy metallic clack, the prisoner is removed from the city. They become part of the hidden labyrinth we explored earlier. The constable, his duty done, returns to the street. He has cleaned a small corner of the world dot inside the station house. The telegraph dial flickers. This is the 1888 version of the Internet. A needle on a circular dial spins, spelling out messages from Scotland Yard. Suspect, seen, near, commercial, road. The information is transmitted through those nerves we saw in the tunnels. It is a slow, mechanical conversation. The night watchman's role is to be the terminal for this information. He receives the word, carries it in his mind, and applies it to the shadows he sees. It is a fusion of ancient foot patrol and Victorian high-dash tech dot as we reach 5 a.m. The night watchman's toll is almost paid. The sky is still black, but the quality of the silence has changed. It is no longer stagnant. It is expectant. He sees the early morning men, the knocker-ups. These are men hired by factory workers to wake them. They carry long bamboo poles with which they tap on upper-story bedroom windows. Tap dash, tap dash, tap. It is a gentle, rhythmic sound that marks the end. Of the night's peace dot, the constable meets his relief officer at the designated point. They don't talk much. A brief exchange about a broken lamp on Fleet Street or a suspicious wagon near the docks. Then the night watchman turns back toward the station dot as he walks home. His pace finally slows. The 2.5 mile-per-hour requirement is gone. He feels the weight of the night in his knees and the dampness in his lungs. He passes the lamplighter, putting out the flames. He passes the mudlarks heading down to the shore. He is part of a grand, overlapping cycle of Victorian labor. He has spent 10 hours being the watcher, and now he is ready to be the sleeper. He unbuttons his heavy greatcoat. He removes his helmet, revealing a forehead marked by the pressure of the brim. He is a man who has held the city together with nothing but a whistle, a lantern, and a pair of heavy boots dot as you drift into the final, deepest stage of your sleep. Imagine the night watchman's footsteps growing fainter. Crunch, stomp. He is walking away from your street, heading toward the barracks and a warm bed. The eye of the law is closed. The bull's-eye lantern is extinguished. The doorknobs have all been shaken, and the thresholds are all secure. The city is transitioning. The yellow fog is being pierced by the first cold gray light of a November morning. The architecture of silence is being replaced by the architecture of industry. But you don't need to worry about that. Your beat is finished. Your toll is paid. The night watchman has confirmed that your world is safe. The heavy, rhythmic sound of his boots is now just a pulse in your dream, a steady, comforting reminder that the world is ordered, the shadows are managed, and the history is settled. The fog is lifting. The gaslights are gone. The Victorian night has surrendered to the day. Sleep now, in the perfect security of the morning light. The watch is over. The city is awake, but you are still in the quiet. Golden heart of your rest dot as you settle into your final rest. Imagine a line drawn through the very center of London, line that follows the curve of the ancient walls and the path of the hidden rivers. To the west lies the city of silk, stone, and silence. To the east lies the city of brick, sweat, and shadows. Both are currently shrouded in the same Pea-Souper fog of 1888. Yet the texture of their sleep is fundamentally different. Let us begin where the air is slightly thinner and the silence is groomed. Imagine we are standing in the center of Belgrave Square. Here, the architecture is designed to intimidate the wind. The houses are massive, four-story monoliths of white stucco and Portland stone. In the midnight mist, they look like icebergs frozen in time. The sleep of the West End is a heavy, cushioned affair. Behind those massive oak doors and thick velvet curtains, the noise of the city is an intruder that has been successfully barred. The geometry here is wide and spacious. The streets are broad, allowing for the architecture of silence to truly breathe. Listen to the sounds of the West End at 3 a.m. They are sparse. Occasionally, the distant tock-tock of a private carriage's wheels, not a common hansom, but a personal broom sounds against the macadamized road. The horses here are better fed, their hooves striking the ground with a softer, more dignified resonance. The light here is amber and elite. The gas lamps are spaced at regular intervals, their globes cleaned daily by a small army of municipal workers. The shadows are long, elegant, and predictable. This is a city that sleeps with the confidence of the empire behind it. Every brick, every iron railing, and every heavy curtain is a layer of protection against the chaos of the world. Now, let your mind travel eastward, past the city, past the tower, and into the labyrinth of Spitalfields and Whitechapel. The transition is not gradual. It is a sudden tightening of the world. The wide squares of the West are replaced by courts and alleys, so narrow that two people cannot walk abreast. The architecture here is not stone, but raw, soot-blackened London stock brick. The sleep of the East End is not cushioned. It is communal. In the tenements of Flower and Dean Street, sleep is a luxury fought for in the dark. While the West End sleeps in bedchambers, the East End sleeps in penny hangs. Imagine a room where a long rope is stretched from wall to wall. For a penny, a man can lean over the rope and sleep standing up, his weight supported by the hemp. In the morning, the proprietor simply unties the rope, and the sleepers fall to the floor, the Victorian alarm clock. The sounds here are intimate and crowded. You hear the coughing of children through thin lath and plaster walls. You hear the rhythmic creak of a hand loom in an upper garret, where a silk weaver is working through the night to meet a deadline. The East End does not sleep in silence. It sleeps in a low, hummed chorus of human proximity. Consider the boring history of the fireplace. In the West End, the hearth is a decorative masterpiece of marble and tile. The coal is best Welsh anthracite, burning with a clean blue flame and leaving behind a fine white ash. The heat is steady, managed by a night fireman who moves silently through the servants' passages to ensure the master's room never grows cold. In the East End, the hearth is the only source of light, heat, and cooking. The coal is sea coal, grimy, sulphurous, and prone to spitting sparks. The smell of the East End night is the smell of this coal mixing with the scent of fried onions, damp sawdust, and the heavy, sweet aroma of the nearby breweries. In the West, the smoke rises high into the atmosphere through tall, ornate chimneys. In the East, the smoke lingers in the narrow alleys, adding its weight to the Pea-Souper until the fog becomes a solid, breathable fabric. The West End doorknob is made of polished brass, cold and heavy. It is cleaned every morning by a housemaid until it shines like a small sun. It is a symbol of the barrier between the public and the private. The East End threshold is often just a piece of burlap sacking hung over a frame, or a door that has warped so badly it no longer fits its casing. The boundary between the street and the home is porous. The sounds of the night watchman's boots, which we heard earlier, are much louder here. In the West, the law is a guardian. In the East, the law is a constant rhythmic intrusion dot as the night progresses. The two cities interact through their appetites. In the West, the gastronomy is hidden. The grand clubs of Pall Mall have their kitchens in the basement, where the smell of roasting venison is vented through secret flues. The food arrives in silent, silver-covered trays. In the East, the gastronomy is on the sidewalk. We see the hot eel stalls and the pea-soup vendors. The food is steam, noise, and copper coins. The gastronomy of the night in the East End is a survival tactic, calories burned against the cold. In the West, it is a ritual of leisure. Even the fog behaves differently in these two cities. In the West End, the fog is a romantic element. It curls around the statues of Lord Nelson and the Duke of York, making the city look like a theatrical set. It is a fog that suggests mystery and Victorian melodrama. In the East End, the fog is a practical burden. It is thicker here because of the thousands of low chimneys and the proximity to the marshy riverbanks. It is a fog that hides the jack we discussed, but it also hides the exhaustion of the dockworkers. It is a fog that tastes of salt, soot, and sweat. Listen to the clocks. In the West End, the clocks are chronometers. They are precise, melodic, and musical. The chimes of the grandfather clocks in the hallways of Mayfair are softened by thick carpets and tapestries. Time here is a graceful progression. In the East End, time is marked by the factory hooter and the ship's bell. It is a jarring industrial time. The clocks are made of iron and loud brass. Time here is not a progression. It is a deadline. Even in sleep, the East End is waiting for the whistle that will signal the start of another 12-hour shift. Between these two sleeping giants lies the city, the square mile of banks and cathedrals. At 3:30 a.m., the city is the neutral ground. It is the silent vacuum that separates the silk from the burlap. Here, the architecture of silence is at its most profound. The Bank of England stands like a windowless fortress of stone. St. Paul's Cathedral acts as the giant pillar of the night, its dome visible from both the West and the East. It is the only thing they share, a single, dark landmark in a divided world. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine the dreams of these two cities. In the West, the dreams are of expansion, of maps turned red with the colors of the empire, of crystalline structures and garden parties that never end. In the East, the dreams are of a full stomach, a dry bed, and a morning where the fog doesn't sting the throat. Yet, as the night watchman walks his beat from one district to another, he sees that the biological reality is the same. The slow, rhythmic rise and fall of a chest in a velvet-lined bed is the same as the rise and fall of a chest leaning over a penny rope. The midnight pulse we explored is a universal human heartbeat. As the first hint of gray light begins to filter through the eastern marshes, the tale of two cities reaches its conclusion. The sun does not care about the Staffordshire blue bricks of the East or the Portland stone of the West. It treats both with the same cold, impartial light. The fog begins to thin. The Pea-Souper loses its yellow tint and becomes a pale, translucent white. The West End housemaids begin to polish the brass doorknobs. The East End knocker-ups begin to tap on the windows. The invisible line through the center of London is momentarily erased by the morning light. The two sleeping cities wake up as one massive breathing machine. Your journey through the Victorian night is now complete. You have seen the cobblestones and the iron, the river and the sewers, the palaces and the pies. You have walked the beat with the watchman and felt the divide between the west and the east. But now, as the morning breaks, you realize that the most boring and beautiful truth of history is that everyone, regardless of their station, eventually surrenders to the night. The silk and the burlap are both folded away. The stone and the brick both grow cold. You are now in the neutral ground of sleep. There is no West End, no East End, only the quiet, rhythmic peace of the present moment. The fog of 1888 has finally cleared, leaving you in a place of absolute stillness. The city is awake, but you are not. You are the silent witness who has seen it all and can now let it all go. The story is told. The history is settled. The night is done. As you lie in the perfect stillness of your room, imagine the color of the world changing. The absolute black and the flickering amber of the gaslight are beginning to yield to a new tone, a soft, metallic, and heavy gray. This is the gray dawn of 1888. It is not a bright sunrise. In the London of the 19th century, the sun does not rise so much as it gradually bleeds through the layers of coal, smoke, and river vapor. This is the hour when the city's secrets are tucked away, and the grand, industrial machinery of the morning begins to groan into life. Look at the fog outside the window of our imaginary room. For hours, it has been a solid, suffocating presence. But now, a light wind is rising from the Thames estuary. It is a salt-tinged breeze. It begins to pull at the Pea-Souper. Watch the geometry of the mist. It no longer sits in heavy, motionless banks. It begins to swirl in long, ghostly ribbons. It lifts away from the surface of the cobblestones, revealing the wet, dark granite we stood upon hours ago. The Pea-Souper is retreating, shrinking back into the narrow alleys and the damp corners of the churchyards. Like a tide going out. As the mist thins, the outlines of the world become sharp. The iron railings, the sturgeon lamps, and the silhouette of St. Paul's dome emerge from the void. They look different in this light, less like ghosts, and more like the heavy, tangible objects of history. The architecture of silence is becoming the architecture of fact. In the boring history of our sleep, the first sound of the morning is the most significant. It is not a bird's song. The London sparrows are still huddled under the eaves of the soot-stained buildings. The first sound is the clatter of a single milk float. Listen to the rhythm. It is a lighter sound than the midnight hansom. The milk float has wooden wheels with thin iron tires, and it carries dozens of glass bottles and heavy metal churns. Clink, clink, rattle, rattle. The horse is a sturdy pony, its breath visible in the gray air like small puffs of steam. This sound is the signal of the ordinary. It tells the city that the night of mysteries and Jack the Ripper fears is over. The transport of the night, the elegant hansoms and the heavy growlers is being replaced by the transport of the day, the delivery wagons, the mail carts, and the early omnibuses. The midnight pulse is accelerating into the morning thrum. Look down the street. The man we saw at the beginning of our journey is returning. The lamplighter, with his long brass-tipped pole, is walking his beat in reverse. One by one, He reaches up to the glass lanterns. He pulls a small lever, and the hiss of the gas stops. The flickering yellow flame vanishes. Click, 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 the street lamps, which were our only landmarks in the darkness, now stand as empty, cold sentinels of iron. The death of the gaslight is the birth of the day. In the gray light, the lamps look tired, their glass panes covered in a thin film of soot and condensation. The lamplighter doesn't look at the sky. He looks at the ground, his boots making a hollow sound on the pavement as he moves toward his own breakfast and his own bed. He is the man who puts the night to sleep, Dot, as we move toward the residential streets of the East End and the workers' cottages of Southwark. A new rhythm emerges. This is the tapping of the dawn. The knocker-up is a professional waker of people. He carries a long bamboo pole, and he moves from house to house with the precision of a clockmaker. Tap, tap, tap on a second-story window. He does not stop until he sees a face at the glass or a hand wave in acknowledgement. Think of the geometry of this sound. It is a vertical communication. It connects the silent street to the sleeping rooms above. It is a gentle, persistent reminder that time has moved on. The knocker-up is the human alarm clock of the Victorian era, a living bridge between the world of dreams and the world of the factory whistle. Now, look up at the horizon. In the West End, the chimneys are just beginning to release thin, polite wisps of smoke as housemaids light the fires in the drawing rooms. But in the East, the great industrial chimneys of the sugar refineries, the breweries, and the gasworks are exhaling in earnest. Dot. This is the black dawn. The smoke rises in thick, oily columns, mingling with the retreating fog to create a new, darker sky. The air smells of sulfur, toasted grain, and burned coal. This is the smell of the British Empire at work. It is heavy, industrial, and strangely comforting in its consistency. The gastronomy of the night has been replaced by the chemistry of the day. We return to the riverbank one last time. The whispers of the Thames are gone, replaced by a roar. The slack water we observed at midnight has long since passed. The river is now a churning, brown torrent of activity. The ghost fleet of barges we saw in the dark is now in motion. The red ochre sails are being unfurled, catching the cold morning wind. Steam tugs are hooting, not the mournful moan of the foghorn, but sharp, aggressive whistles as they maneuver the massive colliers into the docks. The river is no longer a silent witness. It is a chaotic conveyor belt. The water stairs are busy with watermen and lightermen, their voices carrying across the water in a rough, melodic cabbie's cant of the river. The mudlarks have vanished, replaced by the professionals of the tide. Beneath the pavement, the labyrinth we explored is also changing. The toshers and the river pirates have retreated into the shadows as the flushing men of the Metropolitan Board of Works begin their morning rounds. They open the heavy iron sluice gates, sending a massive head of water through the brick tunnels to wash away the night's accumulations. The silent, stagnant sumps are stirred into motion. The architecture of silence in the sewers is broken by the rhythmic gurgle and rush of the city's plumbing being reset for the day. Look back at the great cathedral. In the gray dawn, St. Paul's loses its monochromatic, charcoal drawing quality. The white Portland stone catches the first real light, glowing with a cold, pale brilliance. The statues of the apostles no longer look like weary watchers. They look like guardians standing at attention. The golden gallery at the top of the dome catches a stray beam of light from the hidden sun, flashing for a second like a beacon. The cathedral is no longer a ghostly mountain. It is a landmark of power and permanence. It anchors the city. As the bells strike 6 a.m., the sound is different. It is no longer a vibrating wave in the silence. It is a call to order, a sound that competes with the rumble of the carts and the shouts of the vendors. The streets are no longer the one-point perspective of empty railings. They are being filled with the walking geometry of the crowd. Look at the figures emerging from the mist. There are the clerks in their high collars and bowler hats, heading toward the banks of the city. There are the flower girls heading toward Covent Garden to buy the morning's violets and roses. There are the sandwich board men, shoulders hunched under the weight of their advertisements, beginning their slow rhythmic march through the West End. Everyone is moving in a straight line, driven by the Victorian obsession with industry. The wandering, mysterious paths of the night have been replaced by the purposeful, linear paths of the day. The Pea-Souper is almost gone now. It lingers only in the deepest basements and the narrowest rents of Whitechapel. With the fog goes the mystery. The shadows that looked like predators at 2 a.m. are revealed to be nothing more than a pile of discarded crates or a leaning lamp post. The mystery of the Victorian street is being unmasked by the cold, gray honesty of the morning. History is awaking, and it is a world of ledgers, coal bills, and steam dash engines. But for you, the sleeper, the awakening of the city is the final lullaby. The gray dawn is a signal that your journey is safe. The night has been navigated. The dangers have been policed. The river has been crossed. The architecture has held. The world is now in the hands of the daytime workers. The night watchman has gone to bed. The lamplighter has finished his rounds. The city is in good hands. You can feel the weight of the day, the distant rumble of the millions, as a soft, white noise that pushes you deeper into your mattress. As the gray dawn turns into a pale, overcast morning, our story comes to its final stop. The Victorian London of 1888, that astonishing, informative, and mysterious world, is now just a collection of facts in a history book. The boring history of the morning is the best history of all. It is the history of things working as they should. The milk is delivered. The fires are lit. The streets are swept. Imagine the mist one last time. See it dissolving into the gray sky. See the iron railings becoming just iron, the stones becoming just stone. The magic of the night is being stored away for tomorrow. Your mind is now as clear as the morning air, and as heavy as the London clay. There are no more streets to walk, no more tunnels to explore, and no more spires to count. The great mist has retreated. History has awoken. And you, finally, are perfectly, deeply, and traditionally asleep. Good night, the dawn. Good night, the morning. Good night, London.